Chapter 2492. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. Yunjian's flawless face was so beautiful that it made people forget to breathe. Her lips that had never been smeared with lip gloss were as pink as a newborn baby's with a natural pinkish red. Those words, which made one's head feel as if it had been smashed by something, came out from those naturally pink lips. Once the words were spoken, everyone's heart felt like it was being squeezed by someone's hand as their breathing quickened. Lu Fenfen, Suya, Su'er, Wen Jianghu, and the rest had thought that Yunjian would struggle even if she was slaying God when facing Qi Ling's team of 20 assassins. After all, they had witnessed Qi Ling's team's killer move earlier. With their flawless moves and the near-perfect coordination of Qi Ling's team, it would be impossible for Zhang Tai to dodge their attacks, let alone defeat Qi Ling's team. Lu Fenfen, Suya, and Su'er, in particular, could not help but put themselves in the shoes of the scene when they witnessed such a realistic scene unfolding before their eyes. Hence, they assumed that Yunjian must be having a hard time dodging Qi Ling's team's attacks. Who would have thought that not only was Yunjian effortless, she had counterattacked easily and even snatched their weapons away when Qi Ling's team of assassins attacked her at the same time. If slaying God, the top secret agent in the international secret agent ranking, was only a legendary and terrifying figure that everyone spoke of before this, she was now the top secret agent in the world. Now, Lu Fenfen and the rest had thoroughly experienced Yunjian's ability. If those secret agents and assassins are considered the pinnacle of international capability, then she's the ruler of everything. She's the incarnation of God. Han Jinling, who usually had a way of flirting with girls and was gorgeous and handsome when he was a singer in the entertainment industry, was now tugging at the corner of his shirt nervously as he exclaimed with a pallid face. Lu Fenfen's expression darkened. Why was Chen Sini's friend such a terrifying existence? Was she not just an ordinary person from a small place like Longmen City? How did he know the #1 agent on the international secret agent ranking list? He was the kind of person who treated human life as child's play and killed without hesitation. Lu Fenfen and the others who were watching from the sidelines flashed through their minds. Qi Ling, who had just been knocked to the ground by Yunjian, clutched his abdomen and stood up as quickly as he could. As he stood up, he exclaimed to the other 19 agents. Go! Let's go together. The weapon was snatched away by her. This meant that they were in danger. Once slaying God wielded a weapon, then, just as Qi Ling finished his words, however, Yunjian was already in front of him in a flash. The moment the 9 assassins behind her launched their attacks at the same time, Qi Ling's eyes widened. The dagger in his hand spun a few times in Yunjian's right hand before stabbing into Qi Ling's wrists and ankles, cutting off the most important meridians in Qi Ling's body. Qi Ling, whose meridians had been severed, was no different from a cripple. In the future, he wouldn't even be able to hold a dagger. When the other 9 assassins saw this, they were stunned. Qi Ling was the strongest of them all. He was also their backbone. With their backbone crippled, it would be impossible for them to go against slaying God. This momentary pause was just a momentary pause. The dagger in Yunjian's hand flew past the 9 assassins' necks, taking their lives with the flying dagger. At the same time, Yunjian blocked the attacks of the 3 agents who were coming at her from behind. She flashed past them and grabbed their spines tightly, pinching them through their clothes before tightening her grip and grabbing them. A person's spine was the backbone of the body. Once someone with sufficient strength grabbed the spine and pinched the fatal point, the person would die before he could even make a final sound. This was common knowledge in the world of assassins and agents. Of course, under normal circumstances, killing someone by pinching the fatal point of the spine was only suitable for female agents to seduce them. This was because most people would not be able to pinch the fatal point, so they would need to feel around the person's back for a period of time. If it was someone else who needed to fumble around, Yunjian did not even hesitate for a second to reach out and pinch their vital points. In just 3 short seconds, she had killed the 3 agents who had followed her in quick succession. Her technique had once again refreshed Lu Fenfen and the rest's understanding of agents. At this moment, everyone around them was stunned by Yun Jian's fast, accurate, ruthless, and steady technique. They stood rooted to the ground, trembling violently. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. Chapter 2493. In the blink of an eye, Lu Fenfen, Su'er, Suya, and the rest of the 20 top-notch Secret Service assassins were reduced to 7. Yun Jian had severed all of Qi Ling's vital meridians with one slash. With his meridians crippled, he would never be able to hold a dagger or a gun again. In other words, that slash had turned Qi Ling into a cripple. A cripple who was worse than an ordinary person. As for the 9 assassins and the 3 agents, they were killed on the spot by Yun Jian with a single slash. Naturally, the remaining 7 Secret Service agents were no match for Yun Jian. Ha 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 ha, ha ha ha. Qi Ling guffawed when the outcome was decided and the remaining 7 Secret Service agents dared not come forward. The corpses of the 12 Secret Service assassins were strewn all over the ground. As he laughed, tears streamed down from the corner of his eyes. He laughed and cried at the same time. Qi Ling didn't find this strange scene strange at all. As he laughed, Qi Ling suddenly stood up shakily from the ground. He looked at Yun Jian with a wide grin on his face. As he laughed, tears streamed down from the corner of his eyes. Ha ha ha. I can't believe that after so many years, the 20 of us are still no match for you. Ha ha ha. Ha ha ha. Ha ha ha. Qi Ling laughed like a madman. His laughter was earth-shattering. Lu Fenfen, Su'er, and the rest felt their hearts clench as they panicked. Qi Ling chuckled like a car that had slammed on the brakes halfway through its journey. He stopped smiling abruptly and glared at Yun Jian with a murderous glare before snickering menacingly. However, slaying God, do you really think that we can be resurrected because that mysterious big shot didn't give us any other powers? After that, Qi Ling looked at the 12 people who were killed by Yun Jian and said, "Stand up, all of you. It's time for slaying God to witness our true strength that transcends the universe." The mysterious person had given them a brand new power. It was enough to defeat slaying God's mortal body. Everyone was shocked when Qi Ling said that. However, a minute passed and there was no reaction. Qi Ling's eyes trembled when he saw that. What's going on? After that, Qi Ling's earlier arrogance vanished. He glared at Yun Jian and asked in a terrified tone, What did you do? Didn't the mysterious person who resurrected all of you tell you that I have the same power that you have? Just as Qi Ling's fear reached its peak, Yun Jian spoke faintly. After that, her red lips curved into a smile. Qi Ling's eyes widened and everyone else's eyes widened. And I came from the mysterious person who resurrected all of you. As for them, their souls have been completely severed by me. Even if the mysterious person were to act again, he would not be able to save them. Once, the person, the world, the world, the world, the world of the world. There was no other way to save them. Yun Jian's words were a huge blow to Qi Ling. Qi Ling's face darkened to the extreme at this moment. However, Qi Ling's expression only darkened slightly. In the next second, he suddenly laughed out loud, ha ha ha. Even so. That mysterious person even sent Lord Jiuhuang to help us deal with you. Lord Jiuhuang's power is not something you can fight against. Slaying God, you're still going to die today. Qi Ling guffawed. However, his laughter only lasted for 2 seconds. A package stained with dried blood suddenly fell from the sky. The cloth outside the package slid to the ground, revealing a bloody head without a body. Ah! Lu Fenfen screamed in fright when she saw the head. When he saw the face of the head, Qi Ling's smile froze. Lord Jiuhuang? How is this possible? Just as Qi Ling's panicked voice fell, a magnetic male voice that was so cold that it sent shivers down one's spine rang out from behind the rock. That pleasant voice that made people unable to help but indulge in it came out from his handsome thin lips in front of everyone. You bullied the mother of my child. Did you ask for my permission? Chapter 2494. Page 1/1. The head fell from the sky, and when it landed on the ground, the layer of cloth that covered it slid off. It was just like when Yunjian was reborn and his younger brother was killed. Qi Ling's heart was twisted at this moment, and he collapsed. Jiuhuang. Lord Jiuhuang. Lord Jiuhuang is dead. Yes. No, this is impossible. How could Lord Jiuhuang be dead, dead? Qi Ling was so scared that his face turned pale. Even his lips and teeth trembled violently. Compared to Qi Ling, Lu Fenfen was scared to death when she saw this scene. Qi Ling wasn't afraid of the scene in front of him. As an assassin, he had seen all kinds of bloody scenes. What made Qi Ling's expression change was that the final trump card that could kill slaying God for them was dead. And to die in such a cruel way. Back then, when Lord Jiuhuang was ordered by the mysterious person to resurrect the 20 of them, he had even fought with them. The reason was because when the 20 of them had just been revived, they were not willing to listen to Lord Jiuhuang. Who would have thought that Lord Jiuhuang would extend a finger and defeat all 20 of them? That brand new power, the power called spiritual power, made them crave and desire it. At the same time, they also held respect and worship for Lord Jiuhuang. But this handsome man who suddenly appeared actually killed Lord Jiuhuang. Then his strength must have reached the pinnacle of perfection. It was the first time Qi Ling felt fear from someone other than slaying God. He trembled for 2 seconds and took 2 steps back. He wanted to flee at the last minute. Brother, where are you going? Just as Qi Ling took 2 steps back and was about to escape, a whistle was blown and a male voice suddenly sounded behind Qi Ling. This man's voice carried a hint of joy. As soon as he finished speaking, the sound of a knife entering a person's body followed closely behind. However, Adam, who had suddenly appeared, was holding a long blade in his hand. Just as Qi Ling retreated and was about to escape, he stabbed the long saber in his hand into Qi Ling's heart. The long saber pierced through Qi Ling's chest from the position of his heart. At this moment, Adam's face was still smiling mischievously, but the long blade in his hand mercilessly pierced through Qi Ling's heart. After saying that, Adam flicked the long saber in his hand and said to Qi Ling the last words he heard in his life, "Brother, do you feel good?" These scenes flashed past Lu Fenfen's eyes one after another. Lu Fenfen raised her red nail-painted hand and looked at the scene in front of her with shock and fear. In the next second, her head fell. Because she could not bear with so many things that had just happened, she was completely frightened and fainted. With CE and Adam around, no matter how powerful the other 7 agents were, they wouldn't be able to survive. Woo woo woo. Mama. At this moment, Mo-san walked over with 2 children who had been crying non-stop, as if they were competing to see who could cry the loudest. You really have children. Han Jinling reacted at this moment. He looked at the 2 children in Mo-san's arms who somewhat resembled Yunjian. His eyes widened and he asked in surprise. Yunjian ignored Han Jinling. When the 2 children saw Yunjian, they instantly stopped crying. At this moment, the little boy and the little girl had pitiful tears hanging on their faces. They stretched out their hands to Yunjian and cried non-stop. Mo-san, on the other hand, hugged both men tightly, preventing them from falling to the ground because they arched their backs trying to get into her embrace. He did not want to travel to the Amazon forest or the Sahara Desert. The little boy seemed to know that Mo-san was holding him tightly, not letting him get close to his mother. In front of everyone, the little boy puffed up his cheeks and blew. He desperately lowered his head to the ground. Mo-san hugged him tightly and did not dare to let go. At this moment, the little boy's short leg successfully broke free from Mo-san's arms. He shouted fiercely, "Yeah, scum. Scum, scum, scum." That short leg actually kicked Mo-san in the face. With this kick, the little boy seemed to have found something fun. He stood upside down, and his clothes were held by Mo-san so that he did not fall. The little boy's short legs that kicked Mo-san's face began to kick alternately. It looked like he was taking revenge on Mo-san for not letting him go to his mother's side. Top reading website, M. Chapter 2495. Young madam, young master is looking for you. Mo Sen, who was kicked a few times by the little guy, didn't have the slightest change in expression as he spoke to Yunjian. Ha ha ha. You, Mo Sen, also have a day like this. After Adam dealt with the few people at the scene, he directly threw the long saber on the ground and walked towards Mo Senator walking in front of Mo Sen. Adam reached out and picked up the little guy upside down, and then said to the little guy impolitely, "Hey, kid, call me big brother, and I'll take you to find your mother." The little guy, who was less than 6 months old, was picked up upside down by Adam, and he made a very dissatisfied "yaya" sound. "Yo, kid, you have a bit of a temper, you want to fight with big brother?" Brother Xiaoxin will. Adam still had a bit of a temper. However, just as Adam's words fell, he suddenly felt a sharp and irresistible killing intent refracted towards him. Adam held the little guy's leg with one hand and held the little guy upside down in front of him. His head slowly moved like a robot to look at the source of the killing intent. But his eyes just happened to meet Siyi's deep black eyes that seemed to want to silence him. "This, young master." Adam's face slowly stiffened at this moment. When he said this, he also picked up one of the little guy's legs and pulled the corner of his mouth. The next second, Adam hurriedly turned the little guy upside down and held him firmly in his arms. Little guy is so cute, haha. Adam said, and reached out to flick the little guy's pink and tender little face. He swallowed the word kid that he wanted to say at the beginning. Sahara Desert for a month, food and accommodation are provided. Pack up, we'll leave tomorrow. Ce was expressionless. He glanced at Adam, and after saying this, he took Yunjian's hand and walked over to take the little girl from Mo Senator. He held her in his arms, threw the little guy to Adam, and left after saying this. "My God, you want me to go again?" Adam pulled the corner of his mouth, and his face was unhappy. After Yunjian and Ce had left with the little girl, Mo Sen put on his gloves and spoke to Adam calmly. "Let's get to work. Fortunately, you're not carrying a girl. Otherwise, you won't be able to come back from the Sahara Desert for a year." Mo Sen's words were ambiguous. What he meant by starting work was naturally to clean up the scene. What the hell? After hearing Mo Sen's words, Adam clicked his tongue at Mo Senator. Then he looked at the little fellow and was about to show a fierce expression to the little fellow. Lowering his head, he suddenly saw the little fellow looking at him and sticking out her tongue. Adam was furious. In his anger, Adam suddenly opened his mouth and said to the little fellow, "Kid, sooner or later, I'll make that stinking brat of mine marry your sister. Wait for me." He didn't dare to say this in front of Ce. Wei Province, Pan City People's Hospital. Not long after Chen Sini returned to the ward, Zhang Xiaofeng heard the news and ran back as fast as he could. At this moment, Zhang Xiaofeng and Chen Sini had been alone in the ward for a while. It was hot. Moreover, Zhang Xiaofeng couldn't hold back and finally confessed to Chen Sini. "Sini, be with me. Don't torment us anymore. I don't care about blood relations anymore. Let's be together." Zhang Xiaofeng suddenly said this. When he said this, Chen Sini was shocked. However, after the previous incident, Chen Sini was actually a little tempted. She was silent for a long time. Finally, she thought about how she would tell the elders if they were together. She closed her eyes and said, "I've already lost my virginity to Wenxiu. We're really not suitable for each other." Of course, this was just an excuse. Actually, Chen Sini's heart was still a little tempted. She even thought that if she hadn't lost her virginity to Wenxiu, then that day, "I was the one who asked Wenxiu to get you drunk and bring you to a hotel. After that, I asked him to take responsibility for me. Chen Sini, listen to me. I like you. That day, I was the one who ked you, not Wenxiu." Calm. Wonderful Book House. Chapter 2496. Page 1/1. So, Chen Sini. You're my woman for the rest of your life. Zhang Xiaofeng grabbed Chen Sini's shoulders with both hands and swore loudly. Fortunately, the ward was a single room. Otherwise, if Zhang Xiaofeng shouted these words, Chen Sini would be embarrassed to death. But for some reason, after knowing that the person that night was Zhang Xiaofeng, Chen Sini heaved a sigh of relief. As expected, she still liked him. Even after dating Bo Wenxiu for a year, the two of them treated each other with respect. Only Chen Sini thought that she had crossed the line that night. Her heart had already given Zhang Xiaofeng without reservation a long time ago. Even after that night, Chen Sini was still forcing herself to like Bo Wenxiu, but it wasn't true love. At this moment, Chen Sini's tense heart completely relaxed. She threw herself into Zhang Xiaofeng's arms and suddenly burst into tears. Why did you do this? Why didn't you tell me earlier? I hate you the most. Zhang Xiaofeng is the most hated person in the world. Zhang Xiaofeng knew that Chen Sini was being sarcastic. He also heaved a sigh of relief. He hugged Chen Sini back tightly and forced a smile. Bo Wenxiu ran away from the marriage because he didn't like Suya. But he didn't expect that he would lose 2 fingers because of this. It's okay, I'm fine. My mom won't dare to force me to marry again. 2 fingers in exchange for a free marriage. For someone like me who was born in a rich family and had no choice, it's too good. Before leaving Wei province, Chen Sini and Zhang Xiaofeng went to say goodbye to Bo Wenxiu. Bo Wenxiu lay on the sickbed and raised his 2 fingers that had already been chopped off and were now wrapped in white bandages. He laughed loudly. However, his words carried a bitterness that outsiders could not understand. In the end, Chen Sini and Zhang Xiaofeng left. Sometimes, if you want to get a part of what you want, you have to exchange another part of it. Once he did, he would never have the chance to regret it. Once the heavens took away the items you traded, they would not return them to you in the form of a miracle. After Yun Jian and the rest returned to Longmen City, Chen Sini and Zhang Xiaofeng returned as well. The relationship between Chen Sini and Zhang Xiaofeng was still a secret. They didn't dare to let their family find out. However, after everything was explained, Chen Sini's original intention of deliberately distancing herself from Zhang Xiaofeng was completely gone. As for his family, he would keep it a secret for as long as he could. They had decided to be together, and they would not change their minds until death. January 21, 2004 was New Year's Eve, also known as New Year's Eve. On this night, everyone gathered at Qin Yiru's villa to have the New Year's Eve dinner prepared by Qin Yiru. After dinner, the little one and the girl were especially excited. At night, Qin Yu dragged Yun Yi, Gu Nianji, and Leng Mei to play mahjong. Yun Jian sat on the sofa with her legs crossed. Opposite her sat Lan Su. Lan Su, who was also a mother of a child, maintained her youthful appearance. Like Yun Jian, she looked like she was 18 years old at most. Yun Jian looked at Lan Su with narrowed eyes and told Lan Su, "Come with me to Yun Province's shrouded Dragon Mountain in 2 days." "All right." Lan Su nodded. Of course, they would have to wait until after the new year to go to Yun Province's shrouded Dragon Mountain. As for why Yun Jian wanted to go to shrouded Dragon Mountain, there was only one answer. Xingfeng, the creator of Deity Continent, had left behind 3 divine weapons. The third one was in shrouded Dragon Mountain. CE would investigate Xingfeng's matter directly when she returned to Deity Continent. The search for the third divine weapon was left to Yun Jian. The path to the peak of Yun Province's shrouded Dragon Mountain was where Yun Jian's target was. It was filled with poisonous miasma all year round and wild beasts roamed around, making it extremely dangerous. It was said that those who came back from the peak were either dead or crippled. However, she had to go to the peak of shrouded Dragon Mountain. Translator, Atlas Studios Editor, Atlas Studios. Chapter 2497. Page 1/1, Sister Jian, contact me anytime. Lan Su nodded at Yun Jian. Yun Jian hummed in reply. On New Year's Eve, Xiao Yunzhu, Duanli, Duanya, and the children stayed up until past midnight, only going to bed after receiving the New Year's red packets from the adults. The little boy and girl did not know what a red packet was. After receiving the New Year's red packet, the little guy happily stuffed the big red packet into his mouth. In the end, they were stopped by Qin Yiru in time. New Year's Eve was very exciting for children. To Yun Jian, however, other than the incessant sound of firecrackers around them, it was no different from any other day. The next morning, Yun Jian accompanied Qin Yiru and Gu Junjian to visit their relatives. Si did not go with them. Since the little boy and girl had slept late last night and were sound asleep this morning, Yun Jian could not bear to wake them up, so she asked Ce to stay and watch over them. Ce dared not disobey Yun Jian. Moreover, Ce did not feel anything about visiting Qin Yiru's relatives. Although it was said that they were visiting Qin Yiru's relatives, they were actually returning to Xinjiang town to bring some New Year's goodies or give the elderly a red packet. Gu Yunjian's relatives were not in Zhe province, so they were visiting Qin Yiru's relatives on New Year's Day. The first family they visited was Qin Yiru's maternal family, the Qins. When she saw Yun Jian alighting from the car, Qin Yiru's mother, Zhang Meihua, was the first to greet her from afar. "Oh, my granddaughter's back. Come in and have a seat. It's been so long since I last saw you. You've grown prettier. You're Yiru's child indeed, beautiful and delicate." Ever since she knew that Yun Jian was the director of new crews, Zhang Meihua had been fawning over her. Humans were like that. When someone you used to look down on became rich, they would forget what they had done to you that you could not tolerate and try to get close to you as if nothing had happened. There were many people who came to Zhang Meihua's house today. They only visited each other during New Year's Day and did not know that they were distant relatives. A normal person would not embarrass Zhang Meihua in front of so many people. At the moment, Zhang Meihua's relatives whom Yun Jian had never met were standing in the yard. They could not help but turn to look when they saw another visit. Judging from the way Zhang Meihua spoke to Yun Jian, anyone would assume that Yun Jian was close to her grandmother. Zhang Meihua was Zhang Meihua's, Zhang Meihua, and Zhang was Zhang Meihua's Zhang house. Yang Zhang's family's Yun Jian had never forgiven Zhang Meihua for what she had done to Qin Yiru. Some people's mistakes could be forgiven, but some people's mistakes were just like those who cheated. They would never be forgiven in their lifetime. Yun Jian had never acknowledged Zhang Meihua as her relative. "Cousin, is this your granddaughter who managed to expand her company overseas at such a young age? Xian Yi, come here. This is your great-aunt's granddaughter. You're the same age." Just as Yun Jian was about to walk past Zhang Meihua to catch up to Qin Yiru, an old woman who was fawning over Yun Jian walked over. She tugged at her granddaughter's hand as she spoke to Zhang Meihua, trying to get closer to Yun Jian. Zhang Meihua knew that Yun Jian did not like her, but she had such a capable granddaughter. Old women from the countryside had no other talents but to brag about such things and compare whose offspring had better grades and prospects. As a matter of fact, Zhang Meihua had already bragged about Yun Jian being New Cruise's director. The old woman who was tugging at a 19-year-old girl was Zhang Meihua's cousin. They rarely interacted with each other. They would only visit each other during Chinese New Year. The 19-year-old girl who was the same age as Yun Jian was the old woman's granddaughter, Zhang Shuani. Zhang Shuani had dyed her long chestnut-colored hair. She looked extremely reluctant when she was dragged to stand in front of Yun Jian. The old woman then spoke again. She spoke in an authentic village accent as she tugged at Zhang Shuani to fawn over Yun Jian. "There are only so many young people in your generation. You must get along well with your family in the future. I heard that you're the director of new crews. You must teach my Xianyi more in the future so that she can earn as much as you do." Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy. Chapter 2498. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. There was a type of person who thought that since they were your relatives, you had to help them unconditionally so that their family could become successful too. Just like Zhang Meihua's cousin. Even when he said this, there was a tone that sounded as if it was only natural. When she said that, most people would be embarrassed to reject her outright. At that time, Zhang Meihua's cousin, who was the old lady, even reached out to hold Yunjian's hand as if she was doing it for Yunjian's sake. Just when everyone thought that Yunjian would agree to Zhang Meihua's cousin's unreasonable request for the sake of her reputation as new cruise's director, Yunjian slapped the old lady's hand away in front of everyone and said coldly, "No." That simple rejection stunned everyone who heard Yunjian. Especially the old lady. The old lady did not expect Yunjian to reject her so straightforwardly. She was stunned. "Ha ha ha. Meihua, your granddaughter has a temper. Aihua, don't be angry. She's just a kid. Although she's able to expand the company overseas and make a lot of money, she's still a kid. She doesn't know any better." Not long after Yunjian finished, a middle-aged man in his 40s spoke to the old lady in an adult tone. He sounded like he was joking. Aihua was the old lady's name. Her full name was Ma Aihua. When Ma Aihua heard the middle-aged man's words, her stunned expression returned to normal. Just like before, she looked at Yunjian with a smile. This time, she learned her lesson and did not hold Yunjian's hand. Instead, she acted as if she did not hear Yunjian's words and spoke again. "Your new cruise's director. Since you're so capable, why don't you bring my Xian-Yi along? My Xian-Yi can do anything. You and my Xian-Yi are cousins. We're going to be a family from now on. Spend some time to teach my Xian-Yi so that she can earn as much as you do." If Ma Aihua's words were said with a face full of righteousness, then this time, she even played the relative card. That was how society was. If you were poor, people would look down on you. If you were rich, people would want to cheat you out of every last drop of blood. No one liked to approach someone who was rich for no reason and constantly flatter and praise them, unless the other party had a purpose. Ma Aihua's shamelessness seemed to be a matter of course to the people around her. Yunjian's refusal would be petty and wrong. In fact, there weren't many old women like Ma Aihua. Most people wouldn't mention it again after being rejected. However, after receiving Yunjian's rejection, Ma Aihua once again spoke in a forceful tone. As soon as she said this, some of the relatives and friends standing around felt that Ma Aihua was shameless. "You want me to promote your granddaughter to make a lot of money?" Yunjian heard Ma Aihua's repeated words. Her red arc curved and she said scornfully. Hearing Yunjian's words, Ma Aihua really felt that Yunjian had agreed to her request. She quickly said, "Let my Xian-Yi follow you. I want to earn as much money as you. She's very smart, no worse than you." She said this with such confidence. It was as if Yunjian was lucky to be able to open the company overseas. If the same luck was given to her granddaughter, Zhang Xian-Yi, her granddaughter's achievements wouldn't be any worse than hers. Sure. Just when everyone thought that Yunjian would refuse like before, Yunjian's pleasant female voice suddenly sounded. Hearing this, everyone was stunned. However, just as everyone was stunned, that cold female voice came out of Yunjian's mouth again. Those words, in the ears of everyone present, made them tremble in fear. "Send your granddaughter to an assassin organization for 10 years of training. If she can come out of the assassin organization alive, then I'll hire her as my bodyguard with an annual salary of 10 million yuan." Translator, Atlas Studios Editor, Atlas Studios. Chapter 2499. Yunjian was not joking. Her icy tone that was so cold that no one could tell that she was joking made everyone's heart skip a beat. Assassin organization? What assassin organization? What kind of organization is an assassin organization? Ma Aihua was an authentic village woman who had eventually turned into a cunning old woman. She had lived in the village for almost all her life. She was like Zhang Meihua, gathering with a bunch of old women to munch on melon seeds and boast about how good her offspring was in their studies, which high school or university they had been admitted to, and how high their income was after graduation. She would boast as much as she could. In spite of it, the term assassin organization was completely foreign to Ma Aihua. Grandma, an assassin organization is a place to train assassins. Assassins are people who kill as their profession. They're very, very, very good assassins who assassinate important people. It's terrifying. Besides, there are usually less than 3 out of thousands of people who enter an assassin organization that trains assassins. Zhang Shuani still had some understanding of the assassin organization. At this moment, she grabbed Ma Aihua's hand and shook Ma Aihua's arm as she spoke to Ma Aihua. It's a place like this. You want my granddaughter to go? Ma Aihua's expression froze when she heard Zhang Shuani's words as she questioned Yunjian. What if my granddaughter dies? Ma Aihua raised her voice and spoke to Yunjian in annoyance. Leaving the assassin organization alive is the minimum requirement I have for the bodyguards I hire. Do you really think that there's a free lunch waiting for you in this world? Yunjian sneered as she glanced at Ma Aihua from the corner of her eyes. With that, Ma Aihua knew that Yunjian was being sincere. Ma Aihua rolled her eyes at Yunjian and spoke to Yunjian in Longmen City's local dialect. Humph, how arrogant. There was a hint of disdain in her tone, as if she was an old woman who had turned her back on Yunjian when she could not gain anything from her. As soon as she finished speaking, Ma Aihua grabbed her granddaughter, Zhang Shuani, and ignored Yunjian. Before she left, however, Ma Aihua turned to glance at Yunjian. Thinking that she could not gain anything from Yunjian anyway, who cared what kind of director of new crews she was, Ma Aihua scolded Yunjian again in Longmen City's local language. So arrogant. If you have the ability, why did you join a killing organization? You're so vicious at such a young age. When you grow up, don't become a murderer and be sent to the police station. Since she had already given up, Ma Aihua might as well make her words even harsher. In the past, when she met her cousin, Zhang Meihua, every year, she would proudly show off. This was because Ma Aihua's descendants earned more money than Zhang Meihua's descendants and were better at studying. In the end, he did not expect Yunjian to appear. Now, he could not show off during the new year. He was not happy at all. Oh, dear, cousin, what do you mean? What did my granddaughter do to you that you have to talk about her like this? Zhang Meihua had always been outshone by Ma Aihua every year. Now that Ma Aihua was talking about Yunjian like this, she was the first to object as she retorted. On the surface, she was helping Yunjian to fight back. In fact, if Yunjian did not have such achievements, Zhang Meihua would not have spoken up for Yunjian. Cousin aunt. My grandma's right. Your granddaughter said that she'll only bring me to earn money if I come out of the organization alive. Isn't it obvious that she's unwilling to bring me along? She's afraid that I'll steal her money because I'm too powerful. Assassin organization? Who knows if I'll really stab someone to death one day and be sent to the police station to spend my next life in jail. Zhang Shuani flicked her chestnut hair that fell over her shoulders and glanced at Zhang Meihua. It was only then that she turned to look at Yunjian. To her horror, she realized that Yunjian was already holding a shiny silver pistol in her hand. While everyone was still in shock, Yunjian twirled the silver pistol in her hand skillfully. She pointed the pistol's muzzle at Zhang Shuani and Ma Aihua right under their noses and gave them a cold curl. In an instant, the words that made everyone lose their composure were blurted out to Zhang Shuani and Ma Aihua. You can try. After I kill all of you, who in Longmen City, Xia Province, or even Country Z would have the guts to send me to prison? Chapter 2500. Page 1/1. No one in Longmen City, Xia Province, or even the entire country had the guts to do so. To send her to prison. Who would have the guts to send her to prison, not to mention Z country, even internationally? Yunjian's words were arrogant to the extreme. Her brazen words, coupled with her undeniable tone, and the silver pistol in Yunjian's hand. Everyone present felt like they had been shot and were facing death. The wrinkles on Ma Aihua's old, ugly, and yellow face were crumpled like a piece of yellow paper that was crumpled into a ball due to the shock of Yunjian's action of taking out the gun. It was even uglier than the crumpled yellow paper. That's a gun. That's a gun. Grandma, that's a gun. When Zhang Xuani saw the toy in Yunjian's hand, her expression changed drastically. She grabbed Ma Aihua's hand tightly, squatted down, and hid behind Ma Aihua. Ma Aihua was scared to death as well, her pale face scrunched up as she shouted, "Who's her mother? Don't you care about this child? Don't you shoot." Qin Yiru and Gu Junjian stood aside and watched Ma Aihua's shameless act. Bah! Who told you to spout nonsense? I think you should take back these New Year's gifts too. Don't come again. Zhang Meihua found a chance to vent her anger. She ran into the house and took out the New Year's gifts from Ma Aihua, a small bottle of the cheapest oil in the supermarket and a carton of milk from an inferior brand, and tossed them in front of Ma Aihua and Zhang Xuani. Take it, take it. Don't come again. Zhang Meihua tossed the cheap gifts back to Ma Aihua and Zhang Xuani. After tossing the gifts to Ma Aihua and Zhang Xuani, Zhang Meihua's anger was vented. Although there were many relatives around, it was obvious that Ma Aihua and Zhang Xuani were the ones who got into trouble first. Instead of calling it a New Year's greeting every year, it was more like Ma Aihua came to her door with cheap gifts to show off in front of Zhang Meihua. Zhang Meihua could not stand her boastful tone and wished she could embarrass Ma Aihua right there and then. Now, the opportunity had presented itself. Xuani, go get your dad. Let's go. Let's go. Ma Aihua stepped back, stretched out her hand and pushed Zhang Xuani. Her own people were the first to leave, and she ran away like a wisp of smoke. He looked like he was afraid that he would be shot to death by the gun in Yunjian's hand if he was one step slower. Zhang Xuani was also afraid. She chased after Ma Aihua and only shouted to her father, who was still standing in the room, "Dad, let's go." Then she avoided the place as if avoiding the plague. After Zhang Meihua ran away, the rest of Zhang Meihua's relatives and friends were still looking at the gun in Yunjian's hand in fear. They did not know whether to run or not. Just as everyone's hearts were tensed up and they were scared to the extreme, they even imagined that Yunjian would lose control of the gun in her hand and accidentally shoot them. Yunjian suddenly threw the silver gun into the air. Everyone's emotions reached a climax at this moment. Yunjian, on the other hand, looked straight ahead. She did not even look at the silver gun that was thrown into the air. She reached out and caught the gun steadily. Then, she revealed a harmless and shy smile in front of everyone. It was as if the murderous girl just now was not herself. She raised the gun and said expressionlessly, "This is a toy gun." Everyone was speechless. Translator, Atlas Studios Editor, Atlas Studios. Chapter 2501. The toy gun was Siyi's toy for the little one to play with, and Yunjian had scooped it up in passing. At that time, everyone was in a daze. Ma Aihua and Zhang Xuani had been scared away by a toy gun that had no lethality. At this moment, a black line appeared before everyone's eyes. If nothing went wrong, there would be news after the new year that Ma Aihua and Zhang Xuani were scared away by Zhang Meihua's granddaughter's toy gun. It would even be treated as a joke. However, these were matters for the future. After paying New Year's greetings to her relatives in Xinjiang town, she returned to Longmen City. Qin Yiru did not have many relatives, and some distant relatives had already cut off contact with each other. Therefore, she went back to Longmen City after paying New Year's greetings to the few families she was in contact with. At night, Qin Yiru made handmade dumplings. She kneaded the dough and rolled it into a big and thin round surface with a tool before printing it into small dumpling wrappers. All of these were handmade by Qin Yiru. Yunjian went over to help along the way. "You have to make the dumplings like this. Wrap them in diagonally. You have to wrap them tightly when you wrap them diagonally. Otherwise, when you cook the dumplings later, the wrappers won't stick together and the fillings in the wrappers will be a mess." Qin Yiru demonstrated as she patiently taught Yunjian how to make dumplings. It was a pity that making dumplings was a profound knowledge to Yunjian. The dumplings she made were either crooked or scattered. Before she could pick them up, the celery, tofu, and meat filling had already spilled out. "It's okay, I'll fix them for you." Qin Yiru turned her head away and stifled a chuckle. She then turned back to take the unshaped dumplings that Yun Jian had made and helped Yun Jian fix the shape of the dumplings. Although the dumplings that Qin Yiru had fixed looked much better than those made by Yun Jian herself, they were still rather ugly. At least they could be cooked in the pot. Ce and Gu Junjian were sitting on the sofa in the living room. In front of the sofa in the living room, there was a color TV. At this moment, the TV was playing a movie about special forces. There were many foam mats on the floor between the sofa and the color TV. Xiao Yunju, Duanli, Duanya, Qin Yiru and Gu Yunjian's babies, as well as the little fellow and the little girl, were all sitting on the foam mats. Except for Xiao Yunju and the other two, the other children were crawling around on the foam mats. At this moment, Yun Jian came out of the kitchen with the dumplings she had made. She originally wanted to give the dumplings to the little fellow and the little girl, but she didn't expect that Ce would reach out and snatch them away. I made it. It doesn't taste good." Yun Jian pursed her red lips. After Qin Yiru helped to cook the dumplings, the skin of the dumplings still fell apart and the fillings were all messed up. They were cooked until they were tasteless. Coincidentally, at the little fellow and the little girl's age, they should eat chopped things. Yun Jian's dumplings were just right. Therefore, Yun Jian took them and gave them to the little fellow and the little girl. She didn't expect that Ce would snatch them away. Delicious. After a while, Ce finished all the dumplings in the bowl, including the fillings and soup. Yun Jian pursed her lips and ignored Ce. She walked over and picked up the little fellow and the little girl who were rolling on the ground. She brought them back to the bedroom to breastfeed the two children. Although the little fellow and the little girl could eat some more fragmented food, the source of nutrition was still breast milk. After breastfeeding, the two children fell asleep unknowingly. Yun Jian just put on her clothes and walked out of the house. Just as she walked out of the house, she was stopped halfway by Ce. "They're asleep," Yun Jian said to Ce. Ce responded but didn't give way. She stared straight at her. Yun Jian understood Ce. She quickly realized that Ce was staring at the place where she breastfed the two children just now because she wanted to. Chapter 2502. Page 1/1. In the end, Yun Jian fulfilled Ce's perverted request. When they went downstairs again and reached the staircase, Yun Jian tugged at her clothes on purpose, afraid that someone would notice something fishy. Ce, on the other hand, had a hand in his pocket as if nothing had happened as he held Yun Jian's hand and went downstairs. He looked like he was afraid that others would not know what an embarrassing thing he had done just now. Beneath that handsome face that was enough to provoke people to beat him up and anger both men and gods alike, the curve of his handsome face rose, and a satisfied smile appeared. "Xiao Jian, are Yuan and Mingyu asleep?" Qin Yiru asked Yun Jian as she cleared the dishes. They're asleep." Yun Jian nodded. "I'll sleep with the kids after I clear the dishes. I've left the dumplings in the pot for you guys. They're still warm. Go eat them, they won't taste good when they get cold," Qin Yiru said. Yun Jian nodded and went into the kitchen with Ce to scoop the dumplings that Qin Yiru had left in the pot. Other than Qin Yiru's house, Qin Yu's house was lively as well. Yun Yi was currently in Qin Yu's house with a scarf wrapped around his chest as he washed the dishes by the kitchen sink. "Beat him up. Beat him up. Scumbag. I'll give you a box of my latest drug. It won't hurt, I'll send you to hell with one bite." Yun Yi was washing the bowls and chopsticks from the candlelight dinner he and Qin Yu were having tonight when he turned to see Qin Yu, who was sitting on the sofa in the living room, hugging a teddy bear and whacking it while watching the cliched romance movie on the TV angrily. He smiled knowingly as his tall frame stood in front of the kitchen sink to wash the bowls and chopsticks skillfully. Yun Yi had been staying at Qin Yu's house for the past 2 days, spending time alone with her. If he were to ask where Gu Nianji, Leng Mei, and the others had gone, of course, it was because they had been chased away by Yun Yi. It was New Year's Eve. He could not let these eyesores disrupt his great opportunity to be alone with his Qinyu. Blood Doll Organization. The leader of the Blood Doll, Di Lin, was sleeping on his bed. He was reading the international news with a newspaper in his hand. Outside the Blood Doll Organization, Leng Mei rushed in angrily. Leng Mei, why are you back? Ruo Yin, who was also known as the sharpshooter of Blood Doll, asked when she saw Leng Mei. Leng Mei had a fight with Di Lin some time ago, so she went to Qin Yu's house in a huff. When she left, Leng Mei roared, I'm never coming back. I don't want to see that idiot Di Lin again. Who would have thought that Leng Mei would come back? Humph, how dare that guy chase me away and threaten me with Sister Jian. So what if he's Sister Jian's brother? I'm going to kill him next time. Leng Mei clenched her fists and spat viciously. Just as she finished speaking, Leng Mei suddenly moved closer to Ruo Yin's ear and asked, Ruo Yin, where is the leader? In the bedroom, Di Lin put down the newspaper in his hand and was about to get out of bed. The door was suddenly opened. Rubbing his head, Di Lin thought that it was his subordinate who came to deliver supper to him, so he said, put it at the door. He did not do anything the last time and Leng Mei was already pissed. She shouted angrily, I'm never coming back. I don't want to see that idiot Di Lin anymore. I'll fight you if you dare look for me, and ran away. Di Lin still did not know what he had done wrong. Rubbing his head, Di Lin had just closed his eyes when he opened them again. The person who opened the door suddenly came in and locked the door. The door to the east and west room. Didn't you hear? Just as Di Lin raised his voice and poked his head out in annoyance, he saw Leng Mei taking off her jacket seductively. She was wearing a sexy red dress under the coat. She wore nothing underneath. She tugged at the red dress and put her hand to her red lips in a seductive gesture as she walked over barefooted. Di Lin was mesmerized. Just as Di Lin was mesmerized, Leng Mei flipped over and sat seductively on Di Lin with the blanket between them. Leader, I missed you so much. Translator, Henyi Translations Editor, Henyi Translations. Chapter 2503. Leng Mei reached out a finger and gently tapped Di Lin's chest. She pushed Di Lin, who was sitting on the bed, onto the bed. Leng Mei was rather proactive, but she was unusually proactive today. Did she not say that she never wanted to see him again? Di Lin knew that Leng Mei would come back or he would have gone to her long ago. He was not used to Leng Mei's initiative. Di Lin grabbed Leng Mei's wrist. His pale and handsome face couldn't help but ask, where did you go? The pleasant atmosphere was ruined by Di Lin just like that. Leng Mei's face darkened as she flipped off Di Lin to sleep on the other side of the double bed with a pout. How boring. As she spoke, she leaned over and rested a hand on the blanket to take the glass of water that Di Lin had just drunk from on the bedside table and took a few gulps. I'm so pissed. I didn't even get a sip of water when I was chased out in the wee hours of the morning yesterday. Chief's the best, I don't have to worry about food and clothing here. Leng Mei placed the empty glass of water on the bedside table. Her entire body was paralyzed and stretched out like the Chinese character, occupying the entire bed. An arm and a leg were propped on Di Lin with the blanket between them. Hey, I'm exhausted from the flight the whole night. Let me rest for a bit. Leng Mei closed her eyes as she spoke, planning to sleep for real. Before she could doze off, however, Di Lin grabbed her wrist. Running away after flirting? There's no such thing in this world. Di Lin flipped over and pinned Leng Mei, who was wearing nothing but a red veil underneath. Chief, what are you doing? So, softer. The night was long. Shi Province's Longmen City. When it was midnight, Yun Jian left the warm bed and left the children to see Yi's care before she got up and walked out. Once she was out of the woods, Yun Jian flashed to a garden not far away from the mansion. Snake. Lizard was standing there with her arms behind her back. Hearing the sound, Snake. Lizard turned to Yun Jian. Sister Jian. Yes. Yun Jian nodded and asked, have you prepared the details of the shareholders of the International Intelligence Platform Center who refused to withdraw their embezzlement from the Kosha mercenaries? Previously, at the International Intelligence Platform Center, Yun Jian had used Diani's hand to demonstrate to the big shots of the International Intelligence Platform Center. The Kosha mercenaries' intelligence unit had always been suppressed by the International Intelligence Platform. If the forces behind Diani's intelligence team were not the Kosha mercenaries, those old bastards would have been even more ruthless. Some time ago, the chairman of the International Intelligence Platform Center had called for an emergency shareholders meeting to immediately withdraw the embezzlement of the Kosha mercenaries' intelligence team. However, some stubborn shareholders refused to do so. Yun Jian planned to make those old men pay the price today. The stubborn shareholders refused to back down because they thought that slaying God would never interfere in this matter. Otherwise, what would he be doing? In this world, there were always some people who held on to a fluke mentality, thinking that their luck wouldn't be so bad. It's ready. It's all here. Snake. Lizard passed a stack of documents to Yun Jian. By then, Yun Jian had removed her jacket to reveal the tight-fitting outfit she was used to wearing when she went on missions in her previous life. After equipping herself with the weapon Snake, Lizard had passed to her. Yun Jian raised her hand to wipe her red lips. Her other hand was toying with a Beretta M92F silenced pistol. She narrowed her eyes and looked into the distance through the gun's aiming line. At the same time, she spoke calmly but the words that could change the outcome of the world. Go to the International Secret Agent Assassin website and spread the word immediately. I, slaying God, will return to the International Secret Agent Assassin Circle to carry out missions. M. Chapter 2504. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation, page 1/1. Since her rebirth, Yun Jian had been roaming the world's pinnacle as slaying God, but she had never accepted a mission with a high reward from an international assassin website. In other words, although Yun Jian had always been around, the 1027 assassination missions she completed and the 109 assassin organizations she annihilated were all completed before her rebirth. Since she did not accept any missions from the International Secret Agent Killer website, it meant that as slaying God, all the records that were recorded in her files were completed by her a few years ago. In the years that followed, slaying God had never accepted a single bounty mission. She could be considered as having retired from the International Assassin Circle. To put it simply, she would not accept the mission no matter how much money she was offered. Slaying God had retired for many years. Letting Snake, Lizard say this meant that Yun Jian was returning to the Assassin Circle to carry out missions again. Yes. Sister Jian. Snake. Lizard answered loudly when she heard Yun Jian. After Yun Jian was done preparing all her equipment, a pair of sunglasses appeared with a flick of her wrist. She put them on gently. Get ready to go. After putting the sunglasses on, Yun Jian walked to the Ferrari sports car not far away and pulled open the door to the driver's seat to get in easily. Snake. Lizard followed Yun Jian to the front passenger seat of the Ferrari sports car. The fiery red LaFerrari sped away like a flash of lightning. As the shareholders of the International Intelligence Platform Center, they had offended many people on a daily basis. There were plenty of people on the International Assassin website who wanted to eliminate the shareholders with a hefty reward. In spite of it, there were very few assassins and secret agents who were capable of taking on the task of assassinating the shareholders of the International Intelligence Platform Center. Screech, the sports car sped along the highway at lightning speed. Occasionally, when they passed by a bend, the reflection of Yun Jian's red lips could be seen in the rearview mirror. Slaying God had accepted the hefty reward for the shareholders of the International Intelligence Platform Center. There was an unspoken rule when Slaying God went on a mission. Basically, assassins and special agents would kill their targets without anyone knowing when they went on a mission. On the other hand, Slaying God never hid when she went on a mission. On the other hand, she would send an assassination notice to the target in advance. Tell him in advance that I'm coming to kill him. The real reason why the international bigwigs, businessmen, and politicians were afraid of slaying God was that even after slaying God had sent them the assassination notice and told them to be prepared for the nets above, snares below, it was futile. This was the most frightening part. International Intelligence Platform Center, conference room. What's going on? Slaying God is really going to attack us. A short and plump middle-aged man stood up, trembling. He looked at the director of the International Intelligence Platform in the middle of the room, holding an assassination notice written by Slaying God. Slaying God, who hasn't been on a mission for years. How could this be? How could this be? Director, I don't want to die. I don't want to. Director, let's revoke the deduction of the Wuxia Mercenaries Intelligence Unit. We don't want that money anymore. I beg you to save us. Save us. Another shareholder who was doing well in the business world also held an assassination notice in his hand. He was so frightened that he fell to the ground, trembling uncontrollably. The director sitting at the top frowned and suddenly opened his eyes. He looked at the shareholders who had received the assassination notice with a gloomy expression. You didn't listen to me when I asked you to revoke the deduction of the Wuxia Mercenaries Intelligence Unit. It's too late to revoke the deduction now. Don't you know that ever since Slaying God debuted, she's sent out 1,027 assassination notices? None of the targets have lived past the second day. Top reading website, M. Chapter 2505. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation, page 1/1. The director of the International Intelligence Platform Center had foresight. Not only did he revoke the deduction of his shares from the Wuxia Mercenaries Intelligence Team, but he had also gone to the Wuxia Mercenaries to ask for punishment. There was a director and 10 shareholders present. There were 4 shareholders who revoked the deduction of the Wuxia Mercenaries Intelligence Team. Other than the director and the 4 shareholders, the other 6 shareholders had received the assassination notice from Slaying God. Everyone knew that Slaying God had carried out 1027 assassination missions and had also issued 1027 assassination notices. Receiving the assassination notice from Slaying God was equivalent to having 1 foot in a coffin. Before this, no one in the world could escape from Slaying God's assassination. Director. We know we're wrong. I can give all my shares in the company to Slaying God. I don't want any of my family assets. Please help me, I don't want to die. The short and fat middle-aged man was paralyzed on the ground. He looked ahead blankly, then suddenly crawled toward the director's seat in a dog-like manner. He reached out and grabbed the director's trousers. His hands were shaking more violently than a spring. Fear, terror, and all sorts of emotions were mixed in the short and fat middle-aged man's eyes. What were you doing earlier? If you'd listened to me and revoked the deduction, this wouldn't have happened, the director yelled. We thought that Slaying God wouldn't return. Director, I beg you to save me. As long as you save me, I will give you all my shares. The director blinked at the short and fat middle-aged man's words. The director waved his hand. Fine. I'll contact the Interpol team for you. I happen to know a very powerful person in there. But, whether you can survive Slaying God's attack will depend on your luck. In Country M, in a large villa in the suburbs some distance away from the International Intelligence Platform Center. This villa was the home of the Interpol team's captain, Bernie Austin, whom the director of the International Intelligence Platform Center knew. Bernie Austin, or Bernie for short. A foreigner's name was usually followed by his surname, which was why Bernie was his given name. Bernie knew the director of the International Intelligence Platform Center and had been entrusted with it. Therefore, he had his house surrounded. There were many traps in Bernie's house. In addition to the patrols and special forces patrolling nearby, even a fly could not sneak in. The 6 shareholders of the International Intelligence Platform Center who had received Slaying God's assassination notice were placed in the living room of Bernie's house. Bernie entered the house after he was done patrolling. He stood translation. He said to the 6 shareholders, "Everything seems normal for now. Stay where you are and don't go to the washroom. Don't go to the toilet alone." The 6 shareholders nodded immediately. When Bernie was young, about 20 years ago, he had successfully saved a target who had received an assassination notice from one of the top assassins on the international assassin list. Bernie. Together with the Barnet police force, it was not a joke, it was a very powerful force. That was why the 6 shareholders breathed a sigh of relief. Their tense hearts were finally relieved. At that moment, one of Bernie's direct relatives, a young lady in her 20s, who was sitting on the sofa, asked Bernie in a questioning tone. "Uncle, is slaying God really that powerful that you and so many outstanding elites have to fight her?" This young woman was Bernie's niece. Her name was Bailey Austin. Beryl had been spoiled since she was young. She had always admired her uncle, Bernie. She even thought that her uncle was the most powerful person in the world. That was why she said that. After Beryl finished speaking, Bernie rubbed his forehead and solemnly said to Beryl, "Don't worry. She's more than powerful. Today, I've mobilized members from 3 Interpol teams, and they're the most outstanding members of my Interpol team. It's still unknown if they can hold slaying God off for 10 minutes. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. Chapter 2506. Beryl shrieked at Bernie's words, "Uncle, how powerful is your criminal police force? Can't you fight her alone?" Beryl was in disbelief. Bernie sighed, shook his head, and didn't say anything else. The director of the International Intelligence Platform walked into the villa. "Old Bernie, how's it going?" the director asked worriedly. "There's no news about her at the moment. Both inside and outside of my villa, even the blind spots nearby are filled with surveillance cameras. Unless slaying God came down from the sky, no matter how capable she is, she'll definitely be discovered by my men before she enters the living room." Bernie was very confident about that. On the roof of Bernie's villa, a petite silhouette hopped down from a height of a few thousand meters in a helicopter. The petite silhouette grasped the wind speed, humidity, and any other factors and conditions that would affect the accuracy of her landing. Within 5 seconds of landing, he opened his parachute and landed on the roof of Bernie's villa with a precise position. After landing on the roof, Yun Jian kept her parachute as fast as she could. She moved soundlessly and stuck herself to the wall of the villa. There was only one SWAT officer patrolling under the villa's roof. When Yun Jian landed earlier, she had timed it perfectly. The moment she landed and stuck herself to the wall, the SWAT officer happened to walk to the side. Yun Jian's figure that flashed past was the SWAT officer's blind spot. As expected, Bernie was not a simple person. It was almost unheard of for someone to sneak in from the sky. However, for safety's sake, Bernie still sent a SWAT officer to patrol the villa's roof. Yun Jian stuck close to the wall and followed the SWAT officer around the cover. Just when the SWAT officer walked to a spot where the SWAT officers patrolling under the villa could not see, Yun Jian silently rolled toward the SWAT officer. She placed her hand on his head swiftly like an eagle's claw while her other hand covered his mouth from behind. Within a second, Yun Jian's hand slid from the top of his head to his neck and snapped his neck. Dragging him to a dark place, Yun Jian leaned against the corner of the wall to hear the sound from the stairs. After confirming that there was no one around, Yun Jian held onto the wall with one hand and hung her body in the air by the window under the eaves. Her other hand unlocked the window at lightning speed and flipped through the window. Yun Jian's action just now would have been discovered by the special police patrolling below if they had heard the rustling of leaves in the wind. However, at this moment, no one heard a sound. In the living room of the villa, Bernie is still standing here. Suddenly, the police officer's voice was heard from outside the house. It's slaying God. Slaying God was here. Slaying God has been found." Hearing this, Bernie turned around and told the 6 shareholders, "Stay here and don't move. He held his pistol and rushed out of his villa as fast as he could. "Captain. It wasn't slaying God. Go back quickly. We've fallen into a trap." Just as he rushed to the scene where the voice came from, the shouting SWAT officer was holding a butterfly knife in his hand as he screamed with his eyes wide open. Bernie roared and ran back to the living room as fast as he could. He saw his niece Biyao and the director of the International Intelligence Platform Center lying on the ground, paralyzed and trembling in fear. The 6 targets of slaying God, the 6 shareholders of the International Intelligence Platform Center, were lying in a pool of blood. Their eyes were wide open as they died with everlasting regret. There was a piece of white paper with words written on it on the wooden table. The paper was pinned to the table by a dagger. Bernie's heart skipped a beat. He walked forward quickly and saw the words written in red ink on the white paper. The words were written in a carefree manner, but they gave off a sense of terror. Target killed, handwritten by slaying God. M. Chapter 2507. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation, page 1/1, Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. He had heard of slaying God's method of completing missions and that ordinary people could not even see her shadow. Initially, Bernie thought that he would be able to face slaying God head-on after so much planning. Even if he could not defeat her, he would at least be able to hold her back for 10 minutes. What Bernie did not expect was that he would be utterly defeated by slaying God. Forget 10 minutes, it was not even a second. He could not even see slaying God's shadow. When his underling shouted, "Slaying God is here," Bernie did not even have the time to check before dashing out. Moreover, unless slaying God had really descended from the sky. Otherwise, no matter how powerful she was, she could only attack from outside the door. That was also the reason why Bernie, the captain of the International Police Force, fell for her trick. Not only was slaying God powerful, but she also knew how to read people's minds. From the moment she created the illusion that she had snuck in from outside, she had already guessed that Bernie would definitely dash out of the house based on his personality. "Did you see slaying God just now?" Bernie raised his voice and looked at his niece Beryl and the director, who were huddled on the ground in fear. "And no, I didn't see them. T-Uncle and the rest died suddenly. It was just a blink of an eye. When I opened my eyes, they were dead. They were dead." Sob, Beryl hugged her body tightly in fear as she shuddered. There was a hint of sobbing in her voice. She was so frightened that she had lost all feeling in her body. "What about this flying dagger? Where did it come from?" Belle asked before Beryl could finish her sobbing. I saw it. The staircase. It came from upstairs." The director pointed at the top of the stairs with a trembling finger. Using all the strength he had left in his life, he uttered the words that scared him out of his wits. "The staircase, upstairs, in the sky, in the sky. She came from the sky." Bernie was suddenly enlightened. He held his pistol and rushed out of the villa, only to see the girl in the sky holding the rope hanging from the helicopter with one hand. He couldn't see her face clearly because she was wearing a pair of sunglasses. Grabbing the rope that hung down from the helicopter with one hand, Yun Jian, who was hoisted higher, was not at all afraid. With a touch of her red lips, she flashed a taunting grin at Bernie. In the next second, he grabbed the rope with his other hand and quickly climbed from the bottom of the rope to the top of the rope. With a simple somersault, the helicopter was already a few hundred meters above the ground. He took advantage of the momentum and somersaulted into the helicopter. His movements were extremely smooth, so relaxed that it was unbelievable that a person could do it. Bernie shuddered violently. She watched as Yunjian left, but there was nothing she could do. The next day, international news agencies of all sizes spread the news. Slaying God, the #1 on the international secret agent ranking, had returned. She had returned and killed the 6 shareholders of the International Intelligence Platform Center who had maliciously embezzled the Kosha mercenaries' intelligence team. As soon as the news came out, it instantly replaced the media's reports on the celebrities in the entertainment industry. Everyone turned their attention to this matter. In the next few months, all the companies and enterprises that had embezzled the Wuxia mercenaries' foreign cooperation projects returned all the embezzled funds to the Wuxia mercenaries. Some companies and enterprises even returned the embezzled funds to the Wuxia mercenaries after hearing the news. They even offered hundreds of millions of USD in cash to show their sincerity. Just like the directors of the International Intelligence Platform Center, they took the initiative to apologize. Slaying God's name swept through all the major international news media. Even all the programs that reported on the entertainment industry were taken off the air and switched to Slaying God's program. At this moment, Yun Jian, who had caused a global storm, was sitting in a coffee shop in River City's university town. Outside the coffee shop, Mo Bufan and the rest from the martial arts club who had just reported to the university received the news of Yun Jian's return. They seemed to have gathered for a gang fight. Under the attention of passers-by, they rushed into the coffee shop and rushed to Yun Jian. "President, you're finally back." Top reading website, M. Chapter 2508. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation, page 1/1. It had been 15 or 16 days since the first day of the new year, and since that incident had happened. It was time for the students to return to school. There were more than 10 universities in Jianghu University City. The university students here generally started school early. Jianghu City of Zhe Province paid more attention to academics, so the school started school early. The winter and summer holidays were very late. Of course, this was not a good thing for the students. At that time, Mo Bufan led a group of people into the coffee shop as if they were going to fight. They surrounded Yun Jian. Yun Jian held a cup of coffee in her hand and tasted it carefully. She did not turn to look at Mo Bufan and the others. "How was last year's martial arts competition?" she asked casually. Yun Jian had taken a leave of absence a year ago. At that time, the martial arts club was about to hold a martial arts competition. Before leaving, Yun Jian had trained Mo Bufan and the other members of the martial arts club. Of course it was a complete victory. "President, you don't know, but after our martial arts club won a complete victory last year, we represented all the universities in Jianghu City and participated in the provincial martial arts competition. We also got into the top 3. If nothing goes wrong, the school will arrange for us to represent Zhe Province in the national competition in the next few days. Since you're back, President, you should participate with us." Before Mo Bufan could speak, Zhou Huntao spoke first from Yun Jian. "I won't participate." Yun Jian pursed her red lips. After speaking, Yun Jian handed an invitation to Mo Bufan and the others one by one. Then, she stood up and said to them, "On April 1st, I will hold an engagement party at Hubble Island. There will be a car to pick you up. This is the invitation." This invitation was made recently. Yun Jian had already sent out invitations to many people. The 1st of April was Yun Jian's birthday. It could be translated as CE without the intonation. Perhaps it was fate for her to be with CE. "Yes, President." An engagement party at Hubble Island. Hubble Island was voted as the world's sexiest beach by Country M's Newsweek. Along the beach, there was a luxurious resort consisting of 25 colorful villas. And Hubble Island is most famous for its pink beach. Other beaches are yellow, but Hubble Island's beach is pink. It's made of real pink sand. This is King romantic. Zhou Huntao said to Yun Jian with admiration. Yun Jian pursed her lips and said to them, "Remember, on the night of March 31st, there will be a special car to take you to Hubble Island." Okay. Even if he forgot to take a dump, he would not miss such a good opportunity. A free vacation on Hubble Island, haha. Zhou Huntao laughed wretchedly. "All right, wipe your saliva." As an educated young master, Mo Bufan couldn't stand it any longer. He took a tissue and handed it to Zhou Huntao. Hearing this, the rest of the martial arts clubs burst into laughter. It was almost the middle of February, and there was still about a month and a half before the engagement party. Less than a week after Zhou Huntao invited Yun Jian to participate in the national martial arts competition with them, the school sent a notice to Zhou Huntao, Mo Bufan, and the others to pack their luggage overnight and rush to the national martial arts competition. Because they were notified in advance, they were not in a hurry. Although Yun Jian did not participate, she was invited by Mo Bufan and the others to watch the competition. This time, the venue of the competition was in Liao Province. Liao Province was not close to Zhe Province, so they took a train for nearly 20 hours to get there. The winter in Liao Province was much colder than Zhe Province. That was the north, so it was naturally incomparable to the south of Zhe Province. After arriving at the venue of the competition in Liao Province, Mo Bufan and the others planned to familiarize themselves with the competition venue. It's the people from the shrine, hey! Just after Mo Bufan and the others arrived, a group of members who also carried the signboard of the martial arts club walked over from the opposite side and greeted Mo Bufan and the others. This group of people was also from a martial arts club. They were the martial arts club sent by Zhe Province to participate in the National Martial Arts Club. Other than the martial arts club formed by Mo Bufan and his group, who were in the top 3 of the provincial competition, the other martial arts clubs formed by the top 3 of the provincial competition. Shrine was the name that Yun Jian came up with for the club. This group of people was the second-place martial arts club in the provincial competition, the Combat Society. The captain of the Combat Society was a chubby man named Diao Xiaozhan. Diao Xiaozhan's nickname was very interesting. His companions all called him Principal Diao. It could be understood as running around with the principal in his mouth. At that time, Diao Xiaozhan walked over and high-fived Mo Bufan. He glanced around and saw Yun Jian, who had not appeared in the previous competition. He asked Mo Bufan in surprise, Mo Bufan, is this your little girlfriend? After Mo Bufan heard this, he quickly shook his head and then said something that shocked Diao Xiaozhan and the others. She's the one I told you about, the strongest president of our martial arts club. Top reading website, M. Chapter 2509. She's the president of your martial arts club? The one you told us about during the provincial competition last time. The valiant female president who kicked the door of the club that bullied you in order to avenge you? Diao Xiaozhan was stunned after hearing Mo Bufan's words. Then, he spoke in a daze. After that, Diao Xiaozhan touched his nose and looked at Yun Jian's thin and weak body with a surprised expression. From your previous description, I thought she was a valiant and burly girl. I didn't expect her to be. You really can't judge a book by its cover. Come. We're all friends. We haven't gathered for a while since the provincial competition. There's someone selling grilled sausages outside the arena. I'll stop him and let's have a small meal first. Because we have to gather later, it's not good to run far. Let's go to the restaurant in the evening. I'll treat you guys to a meal. Diao Xiaozhan didn't say much about Yun Jian. He was also a relatively bold fatty. After saying this, he ran out to stop the old lady who was selling grilled sausages. After a while, Diao Xiaozhan ran back with a lot of grilled sausages in his hands. Come. I'll treat you guys. Yun Jian didn't argue and took the grilled sausages. At this time, Diao Xiaozhan and Mo Bufan were talking like old friends. In fact, Diao Xiaozhan and Mo Bufan only met once during the provincial competition last time. However, some people, although they only met once, could be like old friends who had known each other for half their lives. In fact, they were bosom friends, destined to be friends. Hey, it's the Lobster Club from the same province as us. At this time, a girl from the martial arts club saw a group of people walking by not far away and said to everyone, Hey! You guys are here too. After the girl said this to everyone, she stretched out her hand to greet the people from the Lobster Club. In this martial arts competition, there were only 3 martial arts clubs from each province that were qualified to participate in the national competition. The top 3 of Zhejiang province's provincial competition last time were all here. The group of people walking by not far away was the Lobster Club that ranked first in Zhejiang province's provincial competition last time. They were also the champions of Zhejiang province's provincial competition. Logically speaking, when everyone came out to participate in the national competition and met people from the same province, there would always be a sense of closeness. However, the female president of the Lobster Society took the lead and snorted loudly. Then, she turned her head and walked away. The girl's hand stopped in mid-air, and the air froze. F***ck, how can they bully people like this? How can they? Zhou Huntao was the first to feel displeased. It's okay, it's okay. The girl quickly stopped Zhou Huntao. This girl's name was Yuan Pingping. She was very honest and friendly. Her looks weren't bad either. Although she wasn't a peerless beauty, she was still pleasing to the eye. The president of the Crayfish Society is called Long Xinyan. I heard that she likes to eat crayfish very much, so she named the society this way. The people in her society don't like to talk to people. Mo Buffon explained to Yun Jian. Yun Jian had never participated in the competition before, so she naturally didn't know anything. Okay. Yun Jian nodded. 10 minutes later, all the martial arts clubs were gathered here. They're here, the judges are here, someone shouted. At this time, a few judges who were dressed very conspicuously entered the venue. The competition wasn't going to be held immediately today, so the judges were here to familiarize themselves. At this time, a few judges entered the venue. When she saw a foreign woman in her 20s, Yun Jian narrowed her eyes. This was none other than the niece of the previous Interpol team's captain, Bernie Beryl. However, Yun Jian wasn't surprised. This was because Bernie's niece was learning martial arts from Z country. Yun Jian had seen a brief introduction of Beryl in Bernie's detailed information. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. The moment Beryl entered, Long Xinyan, the president of the Lobster Society, suddenly raised her voice smugly and spoke to her companions in a boastful tone, flaunting her knowledge. Did you see that? That judge is the niece of the Interpol team's captain. My parents even brought me to her house as a guest before. That's why she knew so much. Did you know that during this period of time, there's a huge uproar about slaying God, the #1 on the international secret agent ranking, returning to the secret agent circle? The first mission she carried out after returning was related to Beryl. Beryl, that's someone who has seen the true face of the #1 on the international secret agent ranking, slaying God. Chapter 25:10. Long Xinyan spoke very loudly as if she was afraid that the martial arts club members standing next to her would not be able to hear her. Long Xinyan's Lobster Society was indeed very powerful. As the top martial arts club in Zhe Province's martial arts competition, it was only natural that they were capable. Sister Xinyan, does that mean that you know that judge? He's the judge who saw slaying God's true face. A female member of the Lobster Society looked at Long Xinyan excitedly and asked carefully. Long Xinyan saw that the members of the Shrine and the Combat Society were looking at her not far away. She pursed her lips and said confidently, "Of course." In fact, Long Xinyan had attended a ball held by the Beryl family with her parents a few years ago. She had seen Beryl from afar, just like this time. In reality, she had never had the chance to talk to Beryl. However, this was enough for her to brag in front of her fellow students. Yun Jian heard Long Xinyan's boasting, but at that moment, Yun Jian was sitting in the empty audience seats. She was watching the martial arts clubs who had gathered to listen to the judge and the organizer speak from a distance away. On the day of the national competition, there would be a live broadcast recording. In other words, everyone's every move would be shown in front of the national audience in front of the television. Therefore, the organizers attached great importance to the national martial arts competition this time. The gathering place was the venue of the national martial arts competition. Long Xinyan had just finished bragging when it was Beryl's turn to speak. She cleared her throat with a haughty expression. She spoke in fluent Chinese, a stark contrast to her frightened appearance the other day. She spoke proudly to the crowd. "Hello everyone, I'm the judge this time, Beryl Austin. You can call me Beryl, Beryl can speak fluent Chinese. Although there are still some English accents in his pronunciation, it is already very impressive to be able to speak Chinese. After the judges had spoken, the organizer said a few more words and dismissed the crowd. After the crowd dispersed, the judges had already left. Seeing that Beryl had left, Long Xinyan boldly boasted. I heard that Beryl saw slaying God's true face that day. She wasn't even flustered or afraid when she saw slaying God's true face. Rumor has it that slaying God was shocked when she saw Beryl. The more Long Xinyan spoke, the more excited she became. She saw all the members of the shrine and the martial arts society staring at her. That feeling made Long Xinyan feel proud. Sister Xinyan, you know so much. Quickly tell us. What exactly happened at that time? The members of the Lobster Society were the most agitated. A large group of people quickly surrounded Long Xinyan. It was as if he could see slaying God's appearance that day from Long Xinyan's words. When Long Xinyan saw that the members of the shrine and the martial arts society were still listening to her, she began to fabricate even more nonsense. Yun Jian ignored her. At that time, Yun Jian received a message from Snake. Lizard. She told Mo Bufan and the others, my friend is looking for me. I'm going out for a while. Then, she walked out of the competition venue. Before he walked out of the arena, he bumped into Snake. Lizard, who had just entered. Snake. Lizard was looking for her because she wanted her to sign a return agreement with the International Secret Agent Assassin website. At that moment, Long Xinyan happened to catch a glimpse of Yun Jian and Snake. Lizard meeting. She glanced over in confusion. Seeing that Long Xinyan was looking over there, she stopped telling the story that everyone was very interested in. Everyone turned their heads to look. They saw Yun Jian taking a black pen from Snake. Lizard and signing her name under a thick contract in front of everyone, looking at the strokes that Yun Jian left behind when she signed her name. It was extremely similar to the name of the person they were discussing at that moment. M. Chapter 25:11. Long Xinyan only glanced at it for a moment before retracting her gaze. Long Xinyan remembered that this girl should be here with the people from the shrine to participate in the competition. She was just an unimportant girl. Long Xinyan did not care about her. Let's go. It's my treat. I'll take you guys to afternoon tea. At that moment, the chubby Diao Xiaozhan waved at his club and Yun Jian's club members and walked out of the competition venue. Soon, he came to Yun Jian's side. Although Long Xinyan did not care about Yun Jian, she was still suspicious of the name in Yun Jian's handwriting on the contract. Especially a young girl like her. Why would she sign a contract? There must be something wrong. When Long Xinyan walked over with her club members, Mo Bufan, Diao Xiaozhan, and the others had just arrived at Yun Jian's side and were about to leave the competition venue. At that moment, Yun Jian had just finished signing the contract and put away her pen. Snake. Lizard also took the opportunity to take back the contract. Hey, wait a minute. The thing you just signed is a contract, right? Can I have a look? Long Xinyan was interested and reached out to stop Snake. Lizard from taking back the contract. Long Xinyan did not give face to Mo Bufan and Diao Xiaozhan. However, because of this contract, she felt that Yun Jian was different from Mo Bufan and the others. Therefore, she wanted to get closer to Yun Jian. Even if she did not know Yun Jian well. His tone wasn't too bad either. No. Unexpectedly, Yun Jian rejected her. Snake. Lizard was one step ahead of Long Xinyan. She put away the contract and walked out. Pfft, so be it. Long Xinyan was stunned. Then, she immediately rolled her eyes. At the same time, the corner of her mouth twitched. Long Xinyan's martial arts was indeed recognized as powerful, but she did not know how to behave. Sometimes, she even wrote her feelings on her face like an underage girl. Diao Xiaozhan was not stingy with his treat. He directly brought everyone to a crayfish restaurant and ordered 10 plates of crayfish. One had to know that crayfish was very expensive. One plate might cost 2 days of an ordinary person's salary. From this, it could be seen that Diao Xie's Zhan clan was definitely well off. Otherwise, he wouldn't have eaten so much. Come come come. Everyone, eat quickly, don't stand on ceremony. Today, I'll treat you all to crayfish. Eat that stupid president of the Crayfish Society. She's so stupid, but she's acting like she's so powerful. Jiao Shaozhan's humorous words made everyone burst into laughter. Yun Jian just pursed her red lips and rested her chin on her hand. Suddenly, her attention was attracted by a baby shop opposite the crayfish restaurant. Next to the signboard of this baby shop, there was a line that said, "Original Draft Design Baby Clothing." Looking through the glass window, the clothes and baby products in the baby shop were all very innovative. Thinking of the two guys at home, Yun Jian stood up and said to everyone, "I'll go take a look." Then she walked out. Just as he reached the entrance, he bumped into Long Xinyan and the others. Long Xinyan liked crayfish the most, which was why she named their martial arts society the Crayfish Society. This crayfish restaurant was the only one nearby that had better decoration and looked cleaner inside and out. Therefore, it wasn't strange to bump into Long Xinyan there. Seeing Yun Jian, Long Xinyan snorted coldly and turned to enter the crayfish restaurant. She found a round table and sat down with the people from her martial arts society. The wall of the crayfish restaurant near the street was made of transparent glass. Therefore, Yun Jian could see the specialty baby shop opposite at a glance. At that time, Long Xinyan sat in front of her seat, feeling depressed. After a while, she raised her head and looked through the glass at Yun Jian, who was crossing the road to cross to the baby shop opposite. Suddenly, from the side, an overweight truck rushed straight towards Yun Jian as if it had been planning for a long time. Ah! A female member of the Crayfish Society also saw it and screamed in shock. With this exclamation, everyone's attention was diverted over. At that time, the overweight truck was less than a meter away from Yun Jian. However, just when everyone present thought that Yun Jian would be like a kite with a broken string and be sent flying by the truck, a scene that made everyone's faces turn pale with fright and unforgettable suddenly appeared. Chapter 25:12. It was an overloaded truck that had suddenly charged toward Yun Jian. Without giving Yun Jian even a second to react, the truck was already right in front of Yun Jian. There weren't many such coincidences in the world. Even if someone were to stand up and say that the truck had lost control and that it wasn't a deliberate attempt at murder, the spectators wouldn't believe it. That was because the truck's deliberate attempt at murder was too obvious. However, when the overloaded truck was only half a meter away from Yun Jian, everyone imagined that Yun Jian would be flung dozens of meters away and fall heavily to the ground, her head bleeding and her life in danger. Yun Jian didn't even turn around to face the truck. As though she had a premonition of what was about to happen, she jumped lightly with one leg and placed her right hand on the truck's hood. Just as the truck was about to hit her, she somersaulted and stood on top of the truck's hood. She was just 0.1 seconds away. Based on the truck's speed, if Yun Jian had been 0.1 seconds later, the probability of her being seriously injured would have been increased. Furthermore, with that collision, she would have died without a doubt. However, jumping onto the truck's hood wasn't the end of it. After she somersaulted onto the truck's hood, she reacted within 1 second. Then, she jumped lightly onto the truck's roof. After running for 2 steps, she jumped lightly and landed on the ground from the back of the truck. That series of actions sounded easy, but to actually do it was extremely difficult. The truck was still speeding forward. Jumping onto the truck's hood, jumping onto the roof, running for a few steps until she reached the back of the truck and landed on the ground. This series of actions not only required consideration of the truck's crazy speed, wind speed, resistance and other factors, but also the possibility of being flung off by such a fast truck. It was apparent that Yun Jian was so precise that there was not a single mistake, be it in the way she pinpointed or manipulated the various factors. Moreover, she reacted and completed it within 3 seconds. Yes, 3 seconds. Within 3 seconds, Yun Jian completed a series of actions that were almost impossible for ordinary people. He landed steadily on the ground. If it were anyone else, they would have been flung out long ago. Yun Jian, Mo Bufan and the others were so frightened that their faces turned green. With Mo Bufan taking the lead, they stood up and pushed aside the stool, running out of the crayfish restaurant with their long legs. Mo Bufan and the others did not spend much time with Yun Jian. However, Mo Bufan and the others treated Yun Jian as a true friend. Not only because Yun Jian was the president of their martial arts club, but also because she was their friend. They were on the same side. Mo Bufan took large strides. Because he ran too fast, he almost fell. However, he supported himself on the ground and stood up. Ignoring his sprained ankle, he was the first to rush out. Zhou Huntao, Zhou Dun, and other members of Yun Jian's martial arts club also rushed out of the crayfish restaurant crazily. They ran to Yun Jian and asked if she was injured and if she needed to go to the hospital. They were nervous, scared, and terrified because they treated Yun Jian as their best friend. It was a friendship that had nothing to do with love, family, or gender. "I'm fine," Yun Jian said calmly. At this time, the members of the Crayfish Club and the Combat Club also rushed out of the Crayfish restaurant and came to Yun Jian's side. When they saw Yun Jian's extremely calm expression, Long Xinyan, Diao Shuozhan, and the others who were already frightened and terrified of how Yun Jian could be so powerful, were completely stunned. No one was able to recover from Yun Jian's astounding performance for a long time. Chi, bang! At this time, the speeding truck suddenly crashed into a building in front of them. The owner of the truck obviously did not get out of the car to call the police. On the contrary, he failed to hit Yun Jian. After hitting the building, he quickly reversed the truck, as if he was afraid that Yun Jian would find him, and quickly fled. Yun Jian was not injured, which meant that the driver did not escape. However, he drove away. What he did just now was undoubtedly a premeditated murder. Diao Shuozhan, Long Xinyan, and the others had yet to react. At this time, they were staring at Yun Jian in a daze. They saw Yun Jian watching the entire process of the truck escaping. "Oh my God, you just now, how did you?" Long Xinyan was so frightened by Yun Jian that she stuttered. Before Long Xinyan could finish her sentence, Yun Jian saw that the truck had left her sight. Everyone thought that she would be frightened by the scene just now, but she was not scared at all. Instead, she reached out her hand and calmly took out her phone in front of everyone. She made a call and said something that made everyone's faces turn extremely pale. "Lock onto a truck with license plate Liao B, U3616 on the 1st Street of South Road. I'll give you 1 minute. Before it leaves the 1st Street of South Road, blow it up. M." Chapter 25-13. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation, page 1/1, fire the cannons and blow it up. These simple words stunned Long Xinyan, Diao Xiaozhan, the other members of the Lobster Society and the Combat Society, as well as Mo Bufan and the others who had already seen Yun Jian's strength. Who did you call? Fire the cannons and blow it up. I admit that the truck I saw earlier seemed to have deliberately rushed over to hit you, but you can't just say things like firing the cannons and blowing it up. Long Xinyan was completely shocked by Yun Jian's shocking actions and her unbelievable words. Now that she was talking to Yun Jian, she was a little incoherent. Yun Jian ignored Long Xinyan. After she finished speaking, she hung up the phone. She left Mo Bufan and the others with the words, "Go back and eat first," then walked to the opposite side of the road. In front of the confused crowd, she walked into the baby shop as if nothing had happened. Everyone present had clearly seen how horrifying that scene was. If she was careless, Yun Jian would have died on the spot. If it were a normal girl, wouldn't she have been scared to the point of crying and howling like a ghost or calling the police? Why, when the call was made, not only was it not a call to the police station, but it also used a commanding tone to order the other party to blow up the big truck just now. She's too arrogant. And who was she calling? Did she just blow it up because she said so? Also, why did she walk to the baby shop? Could it be that she has a child? What a strange person. Long Xinyan let out a series of sighs. She was frightened and bewildered just now. Not only was she shocked by Yun Jian's shocking strength, but she also felt that Yun Jian's words and actions were unreasonable. Where were the cannons? She even fired the cannons. She didn't have a child. Why did she go to the baby shop? Yun Jian must have her reasons for doing this. Let's go back first. Mo Bufan was very obedient as he spoke to the people in his society. Hearing Mo Bufan's words, everyone walked towards the crayfish restaurant. However, just as everyone turned around, Long Xinyan was certain that Yun Jian was just joking. Perhaps, Yun Jian was simply delusional. Boom! An earth-shattering sound rang out from a place a little distance away from where the truck had driven away as if it was fleeing for its life. That deafening sound shook the ground a few hundred meters away from the scene. When this loud boom sounded out, everyone's eyes suddenly widened. This was especially true for Long Xinyan. Long Xinyan was already certain that Yun Jian was spouting nonsense. What do you mean by locking onto the truck with the license plate number? I'll give you 1 minute to blow it up. That's all bullshit. He probably wanted to show off in front of them. That was what Long Xinyan thought at first. Even the ground shook violently when the explosion of the cannon rang out. Only then did Long Xinyan react. Don't tell me that it's really like what Yun Jian said. An hour later, the relevant personnel had already rushed to the scene. At this time, Long Xinyan and the others had also heard about the scene. For some unknown reason, the truck had almost hit someone. Halfway through its escape, the truck had suddenly exploded. The truck was destroyed and the people were killed. According to witnesses, the truck had suddenly exploded without any warning. Other than the truck itself and the owner, no one was injured. It was as if the heavens were punishing him for escaping. There were no traces of the truck being tampered with at the scene. When they heard the news, Long Xinyan, Diao Shuozhan, Yuan Pingping, and the others present were so shocked that they slammed the table and stood up. Long Xinyan's eyes widened even more exaggeratedly. She looked at Yun Jian, who had already bought many baby products from the baby shop, in horror. She said in disbelief, "Just now. It wasn't you just now. It was you." Halfway through her sentence, Long Xinyan deflated. She sat back in her seat as if she was paralyzed, her face pale with fright. Didn't Yun Jian make a call just now before it exploded? How did it end up? She had a feeling that if she dared to complete her sentence, her ending would not be better than the truck owners. At this moment, just as Long Xinyan was so scared that her entire body was covered in cold sweat, she clearly saw Yun Jian looking at her from the corner of her eyes. She smiled coldly and opened her red lips, saying something that made Long Xinyan's spine go numb. Don't meddle in things that you shouldn't meddle in. Otherwise, you'll be the next to die. Translator, Atlas Studios Editor, Atlas Studios. Chapter 25:14. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. Long Xinyan was so frightened by Yun Jian's silent words that her upper body trembled violently. She sat on the bench and almost fell to the ground. Fortunately, Long Xinyan managed to stabilize herself in the end. Otherwise, she would have fallen to the ground. "Xinyan, what's wrong?" A girl sitting beside Long Xinyan asked when she saw Long Xinyan's body trembling violently as if she was threatened. Long Xinyan seemed to have been called back to her senses. She suddenly came back to her senses and blinked her eyes in a daze. She turned around and saw Yun Jian sitting next to Long Xinyan's table. She was wearing a pair of disposable gloves and peeling the crayfish as if nothing had happened. Even the warning Yun Jian said to her did not seem to have happened. Long Xinyan felt a chill run down her spine. She swallowed a mouthful of crayfish. Her favorite crayfish was now tasteless. Too scary, this woman is too scary. Long Xinyan did not dare to think about Yun Jian anymore. She closed her eyes and did not dare to say anything about what had just happened. Obviously, no one saw Yun Jian's silent warning to Long Xinyan. Jiao Shaozhan was eating the crayfish in big bites while giving Yun Jian a thumbs up. You're indeed the president of the shrine. You're amazing. I saw that if you had led your shrine to participate in the provincial tournament last year, then your shrine would have won first place in the provincial tournament. I heard that you can add people to the tournament before it starts. President of the shrine, why don't you bring your club to the tournament as well? I reckon that with the 2 moves you just showed, you can easily take the top 3 places in the national martial arts competition. Jiao Shaozhan was speaking the truth. That's right. Why didn't you take part in the tournament? Someone from the War Society said after hearing Jiao Shaozhan's words. He felt sorry for Yun Jian. Facing the Combat Society member's question, Yun Jian pressed her lips together without saying a word. Seeing that Yun Jian did not say anything, Jiao Shaozhan and the others were very smart and did not press her. It was a frightening farce. Although no one said anything, their hearts were still unable to recover from the shock for a long time. That baby shop was indeed worth a visit. It was different from other baby shops. Whether it was the baby toys or the clothes that the baby wore, they were all designed by the shop owner. The 2 little ones would definitely like it. When she returned to her place at night, Shenji, who had been appearing and disappearing mysteriously, called her. Hey, I didn't expect the call to go through. You actually returned to the agent circle and signed a new contract with the website. 006, do you know that after you came back, the base price of my mission dropped from $50 million to $30 million? Tell me, how are you going to calculate the missing $20 million? Shenji scolded Yun Jian angrily as soon as the call connected. Yun Jian's lips curved slightly. She spun the phone in her hand and said, then what do you want? Fight me to your heart's content. I've developed a few new moves recently. 006, believe it or not, I'll definitely surpass you this time. It had been so many years. Back when Shenji, Mad Dragon, and Slaying God left in Han, Shenji had not given up on his dream of surpassing Yun Jian. He kept mentioning it. Yun Jian smiled faintly when she heard Shenji's words. She said, deal. I'll wait for you at the entrance of the World Martial Arts Competition Arena in Country Z's Liao Province at 6 p.m. tomorrow evening. The loser will treat us. Translator, Atlas Studios Editor, Atlas Studios. Chapter 25:15. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation, page 1/1. As soon as Yun Jian finished speaking, Shenji hung up with a beep. Yun Jian knew Shenji's personality. Based on her personality, she should have left all the internal and external forces of the Soul Eater organization and rushed over from abroad. After all, to Shenji, defeating Yun Jian and surpassing Yun Jian's achievements was her only dream. Yun Jian tossed her phone on the bed and stood up to stretch before heading to the bathroom for a shower. She had called Shenji to Liao Province for no other reason than to get her to spend $1 million. They had been rivals for so many years. It was only right for Shenji to treat her to a meal. Reality proved that Yun Jian knew Shenji very well. Shenji hung up the phone and rushed to Liao Province without even putting on his clothes properly. Shenji was Yun Jian's rival. The 2 of them had known each other since they joined the Inhun organization. This was different from the friendship between Yun Jian and Mu Ying in Inhun. Yun Jian had never treated Shenji as a friend. The 2 of them were rivals who competed against each other. However, after so many years, the 2 of them had gone from being insignificant dust particles who could die at any time when they first joined Inhun organization to being the top figures in the international scene. The only thing that didn't change was that they still treated each other as rivals. This was a completely different way of getting along with Yun Jian, Snake, Lizard, Qingyu, and Lan Su. Snake. Lizard, Qingyu, and Lan Su only listened to Yunjian's orders. Shen Ji, on the other hand, only treated Yunjian as her rival, someone to surpass. The two of them could climb to this height because they competed against each other. The next day, the national martial arts competition would be broadcasted to the world at 6 in the evening. It was still 5 in the morning. Yunjian went to bed early and woke up early the next morning. She went to the nearby gym with Mo Bufan and the others to train for the whole morning before heading to the arena at noon. Mo Bufan and the others were rehearsing for the competition at night. Yunjian sat on the side and watched, giving them pointers from time to time. Halfway through, Mo Bufan and the others were thirsty but they couldn't leave because of the rehearsal. Yunjian didn't refuse and went outside to buy them mineral water. There weren't any big supermarkets near the arena, only a small shop. After buying a pack of water, Yunjian habitually handed the shop's Shinji to the shop owner. The owner had been waiting for Yunjian to give him change but was surprised to receive a bank card instead. This is a small business. I only accept cash. In this day and age, there were very few places where cards in could translation. Is there a bank bar translation is translation is there a bank street translation nearby? Is translation is translation Lu Fifi translation is translation is translation Yunjian accepted the card and was about to withdraw the money. Are you here to buy water for the members of the martial arts club? We are here to help the organizer buy water for the members of the martial arts club. How about I pay for the water with the money given by the organizer? You can take it first. An elegant male voice sounded. Yunjian turned her head and saw a handsome, highly recognizable boy about 184 meters tall talking to Yunjian. Thank you. Yunjian glanced at the boy. After saying this, she walked over to pick up the mineral water she had just bought and walked to the arena. Was she going to let him stay to pay the bill? The handsome and highly recognizable boy touched his hair. He couldn't help but call out to Yunjian who was about to leave. Wait, can I ask what your name is? Perhaps he felt that his question was a bit abrupt. The boy laughed dryly and then continued to speak. My name is Tang Xiaoming. What I mean is. Can you leave your name and which team's martial arts club you're giving the mineral water to? When the time comes, we'll distribute the mineral water at the same time. Translator, Transin Editor, Transin. Chapter 25:16. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation, page 1/1. There was nothing wrong with Tang Xiaoming's words. Yunjian didn't take the water from Tang Xiaoming for free. Instead, the organizers had planned to distribute the mineral water to every member of the martial arts club. Yunjian just took it early. Taking it early meant that Mo Bufan and the others wouldn't be able to get the mineral water when it was time to distribute, so they had to register in advance. Yunjian, shrine. She didn't stop moving forward or even turn around. Those indifferent words came out of Yunjian's mouth. With one hand in her pocket, even if she was carrying a cheap white plastic bag, it didn't reduce Yunjian's aura at all. Tang Xiaoming took a few more glances. Brother, are you dumbfounded? Don't forget that you still have a delicate fiancé at home. The one your parents set up for you. The boy standing next to Tang Xiaoming waved his hand in front of Tang Xiaoming's eyes a few times to attract Tang Xiaoming's attention back. Tang Xiaoming came back to his senses and scratched his head habitually. Don't mention her. I feel weak all over when she's mentioned. Mo Bufan and the others rehearsed until the afternoon when the competition was about to start. Yunjian went out for a walk before coming back. Yunjian had already expected that this national martial arts competition would be broadcasted to the world, so there would be constant rehearsals before the competition. It was simply unrealistic for Yunjian to be obedient and line up in the queue to rehearse. Therefore, she refused to participate from the beginning. At that time, Yunjian had just returned to the arena. The arena was very big. Mo Buffon and the others were now at the competition venue. Yun Jian had just entered the arena, and there weren't many people lingering at the entrance. Suddenly, a coquettish female voice sounded from the other side of the arena. Xiaoming, wait for me, Xiaoming, don't walk so fast, I can't catch up with you. Coincidentally, not long after the voice rang out, Tang Xiaoming, who was 184 meters tall, had a handsome appearance, and had a rather high discernment level, quickly walked over as if he was avoiding the plague. Behind Tang Xiaoming was a young girl, who was speaking to Tang Xiaoming in a coquettish voice. Xingxing, can you stop following me? Tang Xiaoming stopped halfway and looked at the girl helplessly. Why? I'm your fiancé, why can't I follow you? Could it be that you have another girlfriend behind my back, Xiaoming? The 17-year-old girl who was called Xingxing looked at Tang Xiaoming with a bitter expression. She looked like a resentful wife. The girl's full name was Zhang Zexing. When Tang Xiaoming heard this, he slapped his own head. Just as Tang Xiaoming patted his head, wondering how to get rid of his fiancée, who had been ordered by his parents, he suddenly saw Yun Jian walking past him. The next second, Tang Xiaoming walked over and pointed at Yun Jian. He said to Zhang Zexing, that's right, I have a girlfriend. She's my new girlfriend. Are you satisfied now? You're lying. Zhang Zexing retorted after hearing Tang Xiaoming's words. Although Zhang Zexing looked childish, she wasn't too stupid. Xiaoming, you lied to me. You don't even know her name and you said she's your girlfriend. You did it on purpose. Before Zhang Zexing could finish her sentence, Tang Xiaoming interrupted, I didn't lie to you. Her name is Yun Jian. Zhang Zexing. She squeezed her tears and suddenly snorted at Yun Jian and Tang Xiaoming. Then, she turned around and ran away. Tang Xiaoming only heaved a sigh of relief when he saw Zhang Zexing disappear from his sight. Then, he smiled at Yun Jian. Sorry, I used you to chase away the fiancé my parents gave me. Tang Xiaoming wasn't the kind of person who was very friendly. Although he used Yun Jian a little, he didn't touch Yun Jian. He didn't even touch Yun Jian. There's no need. Yun Jian was indifferent. Just as Yun Jian finished her words and Tang Xiaoming was about to say a word of thanks, Yun Jian suddenly dodged to the side and dodged a flying kick from a woman in her 20s who rushed in from the entrance. Then, in front of Tang Xiaoming, Yun Jian raised her leg and kicked the woman in her 20s into the abdomen of the woman who suddenly attacked Yun Jian. The woman took 2 big steps back and steadied herself. This sudden scene made Tang Xiaoming, who wanted to say another word of thanks to Yun Jian, dumbfounded on the spot. However, he saw Yun Jian's cold smile. She looked at the woman who attacked her sneakily. In front of the passers-by and the shocked Tang Xiaoming, she said to the woman, you came here to fight me. Let's make it clear in advance. If we fight, I'll treat you to a meal if you lose. You lost to me by 1 move. It just so happens that I've taken a fancy to a pastry master in country F who made a pastry worth 500,000 yuan. Remember to treat me to it next time. Translator, Henyi Translations Editor, Henyi Translations. Chapter 25:17. The pastry master from country F made pastries that others couldn't imitate, and they were mellow and smooth. It was guaranteed that after eating them once, you wouldn't be able to resist eating them again. Unfortunately, this pastry master loved money as much as his life. Others didn't sell expensive pastries, but he asked for dozens or even hundreds of times more. Of course, to the upper class of the world, a pastry worth 500,000 RMB wasn't that expensive. After all, the most expensive pastries in the world could be sold for tens of millions of RMB. Of course, pastries worth tens of millions of RMB not only had a lot of variety, but they were also large. The pastry master would need half a year to make them. Also, Yun Jian and Shinji couldn't eat that much. Of course, since Yun Jian had let Shinji come to country Z, Yun Jian didn't plan on letting Shinji go back just like that. She would have to eat at least tens of millions of RMB before letting her go. F*CK, 006, you're tricking me. 500,000 RMB? No way. I can't afford it. Shinji's sneak attack failed again. She steadied herself and was the first to refute Yun Jian after hearing her words. Tang Xiaoming was standing next to her. He was a typical campus hunk, and the way he talked to girls was also typical of campus. Tang Xiaoming had seen many types of girls. Some were coy, some were seductive, and some were pure. Usually, in school, boys like Tang Xiaoming who were tall, good-looking, good at basketball, and had a good family background were very popular. There would always be girls around him. But Tang Xiaoming had never seen a girl like Yun Jian. Not only did Yun Jian's friend come to her, but she didn't rush to hug her. Instead, she kicked her. What was even more strange was that Yun Jian dodged her friend's kick and said something like that. She opened her mouth and asked for a pastry worth 500,000. Even Tang Xiaoming, who was born with a silver spoon in his mouth, couldn't say something like that. Because he didn't have the capital to say something like that. What was even stranger was that Yun Jian's friend called her 006. It's okay if you can't afford it. Just then, Yun Jian pursed her lips and spoke again. After hearing Yun Jian's words, Tang Xiaoming let out a sigh of relief. She must have been joking just now. Before Tang Xiaoming could finish his thought, however, Yun Jian's next words shocked him once more. I'll be able to make up for it if I snatch a few more missions from you. Shinji panicked when he heard this. F***ck, please, I'll treat you. Shinji squeezed the words out through gritted teeth. The former would cost 500,000 renminbi just to treat a piece of cake. The latter would lose 10 million USD. Even if Shinji was an idiot, he knew what to choose. That's a good boy. Yun Jian narrowed her eyes with a smile. Shinji was speechless. Why did she feel like she'd been set up by someone? Just as Yun Jian narrowed her eyes and looked at Shinji's expression, a phone call interrupted their conversation. Not long after she picked up the call, Yun Jian's smile faded. She told the person on the other end, "I'll be right back," and hung up. Before Shinji could speak, Yun Jian grabbed her by the shoulder and dragged her out. Before she left, Yun Jian turned her head slightly and said to the dumbfounded Tang Xiaoming, "Help me tell the leader of the shrine, Mo Bufan, that I have something urgent to attend to and will leave first. Tell them to focus on the competition." Before Tang Xiaoming could react, Yun Jian grabbed Shinji's shoulder and walked out. Country Z's Longmen City. Chu Ning and the others who had just received the news could not believe their ears. Chu Ning shook her head. She stared at Lu Cheng and asked, "That's impossible, that's absolutely impossible. You. Instructor you. How could he already? Dead. Chapter 25:18. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation, page 1/1, Yu Xiaoluo. How could he be dead? Ever since Gu Junjian led them into the special forces, Gu Junjian had arranged for them to go to Min City's military academy. Yu Xiaoluo was the military officer there. Although 3 years in high school was neither too long nor too short, Yu Xiaoluo was definitely an excellent soldier after getting along with him for 3 years. Moreover, he was only in his 30s. He still had a long life ahead of him and he had yet to get married and have children. The 6 members of Team Monarch almost fainted when they heard the bad news. The members of Tier X Squad and Strongest Squad had never interacted with Yu Xiaoluo before, so they did not know what kind of person he was. However, when they heard the bad news, all of them lowered their heads without exception. As a military officer who had returned from overseas, Lu Cheng was proud of the special forces who had returned from overseas. Although he looked down on Yun Jian and had even done some despicable things, at this moment, the corners of his eyes were bloodshot. He stood on the spot in a respectful military posture to show his respect. However, as the commanding officer, Lu Cheng wiped away his tears. He looked at everyone and said after 2 seconds of silence, "I've met you Xiaoluo before. I've met you Xiaoluo a few times before. A few months ago, he was sent to rescue Z country's citizens who were trapped in N country. Unfortunately, he was attacked by the enemy and was hacked to death. And now, his corpse and his head are hung on the flag of country N by the people of country Z. His bones are still warm. This time, I, Lu Cheng, will participate in the mission to rescue the people of country Z. I must bring his corpse back." Country N was a country with an imperfect legal system. A few months ago, there was a sudden riot in country N. Many country Z's citizens who went to country N to work and earn money were trapped in country N. In a country with an imperfect legal system, it was very scary when there was a riot. Massacres of country Z's citizens on the streets, wars, and so on. These were things that ordinary people thought were far away and impossible. However, in a country with a riot, it was real. Moreover, the reality was always crueler than one could imagine. Rape of women on the streets and gang rape of women were trivial matters. During the riot in country N, the country N people even chopped off the heads of country Z's citizens and used them as balls. Women were skewered and barbecued like animals. Don't feel disgusted, it was the truth. A few months ago, Yu Xiaoluo was sent to country to rescue the country Z's citizens who were trapped in country. What was more, the enemy of country's Yu Xiaoluo was to the enemy. It was an insult. If such a thing happened to anyone, as long as it was a person, when they saw their own people being humiliated like this, they would definitely be infuriated. Now, Lu Cheng was going to country N to support the rescue. Sir, team, monarch team squad team is team. Even if we, is, instructor, is translation is translation. Translation is translation. Lu Shiyun clenched his teeth and clenched his fists. His entire body was trembling, but his words resonated with everyone. Is team is translation team? Team is team. There were there is, there was is. Is. With your skills, you're not special forces who have returned from overseas. What are you going to do? Is to die. RRR. Lu Cheng's shout sounded like he was looking down on the 6 members of Team Monarch, just like before. However, everyone present could tell that Lu Cheng was trying to protect the 6 members of Team Monarch. He did not want them to be in danger. After all, Country N was in a riot. Going to Country N now was tantamount to entering a smoke-filled battlefield. Tanks, planes, and cannons were places where one could lose their life if they took cover in the wrong place. Lu Cheng dared not let the 6 members of Team Monarch go to such a dangerous place. This kind of mature adults should be handed over to them to do. Little brats. Why are you interfering? Tier X squad and Most Awesome squad knew that their strength was not enough to help. They might even drag the team down. Therefore, they did not say anything. However, just when the atmosphere was at its coldest point, a female voice that was always arrogant but ignited the hope of everyone present suddenly rang out like a vast thunderclap. Team Monarch, Slashing God, is heading to Country N to provide support. We must bring Instructor Yu back. Translator, Atlas Studios Editor, Atlas Studios. Chapter 25-19. Yun Jian's words were like a grenade that exploded on the spot, giving everyone hope for survival. If one were to say that everyone's emotions were at their lowest point at that moment, the future that everyone was looking forward to was replaced by despair. Then, Yun Jian's words were a voice that ignited everyone's fighting spirit and hope. Yun Jian, Tears streamed down Chu Ning's cheeks the moment she saw Yun Jian. She forced herself to stay calm, but once she thought about it, she could not help the uncontrollable tears that streamed down her cheeks. Retired veteran, Gu Junjian, requests to return to the team and provide support. Just as Yun Jian's words fell, a powerful but irrefutable statement followed by Yun Jian's voice reverberated in all directions. Perhaps there were deserters on the battlefield. Perhaps Lu Qing used to look down on Yun Jian and the others and did some despicable things, but he would never run away in times of crisis like those deserters on the battlefield. Because that was his duty as a soldier. The moment he saw Yun Jian and Gu Junjian, Lu Qing clenched his fists again. He pursed his lips and tears rolled down the corner of his eyes, but one could feel the welcome he had for Yun Jian and Gu Junjian. Get ready to assemble with the main force. Let's go. Lu Qing tacitly agreed to Yun Jian and Gu Junjian's move. The 6 members of Team Monarch did not insist on going because they knew that they were not strong enough to go to a real battlefield like that. If they went, they might just be a burden. At that moment, the 6 members of Team Monarch once again felt the difference in strength. As a member of Team Monarch, Yun Jian would not be a burden if she went. Their strength was far from enough. They had to work harder. Yu Xiaoluo was Gu Yunjian's former comrade and Gu Yunjian's best friend. Yun Jian could tell that although Gu Junjian did not say anything, his heart was bleeding the moment he heard about Yu Xiaoluo's sacrifice. You will never know how many great people have sacrificed their lives for the peaceful, serene, and lawful society that you live in. It is said that you only have one life, but they would rather sacrifice themselves in exchange for a lifetime of peace. There were still many countries in the world that were still at war. Someone once calculated that in the recorded history of mankind, there had only been a short 100 years of peace without war. This was a very shocking number. They could gather at the entrance of the military base and set off. They didn't even need to prepare their luggage to go home. Because it was still unknown whether they could return safely from this trip to N country, let alone bring their luggage. Yun Jian, Lu Qing, and Gu Junjian had just reached the entrance of the military base when they saw Shen Ji still standing there. Seeing Yun Jian, Shen Ji walked over. Seeing Shen Ji, Lu Qing was still rational. He said to Yun Jian, "Hurry up and let your friend go back. We have to get ready to go." Lu Qing was doing it for Shen Ji's sake. After all, a battlefield like this was not suitable for Shen Ji. Because in Lu Qing's heart, he thought that Shen Ji was just an ordinary girl who had nothing to do with this. That was all. With that, Yun Jian narrowed her eyes. In the next second, Yun Jian suddenly placed her hand on Shen Ji's shoulder. Right in front of Lu Qing, Gu Junjian, Tier X Squad, Most Awesome Squad, and Team Monarch who came out behind them, she told Shen Ji something that stunned everyone. It has been almost 10 years since we were sent to the battlefield together. Are you interested in going to the battlefield with me again and killing everyone? If you want to chat about campus rebirth, the strongest female secret agent with more like-minded people, follow me on WeChat. Talk about life, find friends. Chapter 25-20. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. When Yun Jian, Shen Ji, and Mad Dragon were in Anhan, they stood out from the other assassins trained by Anhan. After a few years of training, Yun Jian, Shen Ji, and Kuang Long were the only ones who survived among the thousands of people. As an assassin and an agent, they had to be proficient in all kinds of cold weapons, light weapons, and heavy weapons. They had to learn how to adapt to all kinds of situations. Because they had to go on all kinds of missions, they had to come into contact with a lot of things. If they wanted to successfully complete their missions, they had to learn all kinds of weapons. Not only did they have to understand how to use the weapons, they also had to be able to use them as if they were real. In other words, they had to be very familiar with the use of the weapons. And the best place to practice using all kinds of weapons in the world was the battlefield. In this world, many countries were at war. Back then, Yun Jian, Shen Ji, and Mad Dragon were thrown into the battlefield of a country and were forced to learn all kinds of combat skills. Planes, cannons, tanks, they were all proficient in them. Because only by learning how to use all kinds of weapons could they have a chance of surviving. That was why Yun Jian said, "It's been almost 10 years since we were sent to the battlefield together." Perhaps in the ears of the surrounding people, this sentence seemed to be something inconceivable and non-existent. But to Yun Jian and Shen Ji, it was as simple as eating and sleeping. Officer Lu Cheng, as well as the members of Tier X Squad, Strongest Squad, and Team Monarch, who had come out to send them off, were all stunned. Godslayer, you've been on the battlefield together? Dong Lijia of the Strongest Squad looked at Yun Jian and Shen Ji and asked in a daze. Dong Lijia was now deeply grateful to Yun Jian. When she heard Yun Jian's words, she was only stunned for a moment. She didn't mean anything else. Dong Lijia, on the other hand, was tightly holding the hand of Zhu Ao, the leader of the Strongest Squad. Luckily, Zhu Ao wasn't a heartless person. Last time, Dong Lijia had given him her virginity and was saved by Yun Jian. He was dating Dong Lijia now. Not only have we been on the battlefield together, but we've also gone through the Amazon forest and swept through the Sahara Desert together. We've been to many places. Hearing Dong Lijia's words, Shen Ji laughed. She put an arm around Yun Jian's shoulder and looked at Dong Lijia innocently. It wasn't until Yun Jian's sharp eyes glanced over that Shen Ji retracted his hand. So, are you interested? Yun Jian's question rang out again as if she was repeating it. Yes, yes, yes. I'll go wherever you go. Shen Ji said immediately. As soon as he said this, everyone felt that Shen Ji and Yun Jian's friendship was indescribably good. Lu Cheng was worried about Shen Ji, but Shen Ji was Yun Jian's friend. He shouldn't be weak. Since you're friends, remember to take care of each other when you enter the battlefield. The battlefield is not a game. When Lu Cheng said this, he was very serious. Chu Ning, Chu Xiangnan, and the others all looked expectantly at Yun Jian. Just when everyone thought that Yun Jian and Shen Ji were close friends, Yun Jian and Shen Ji looked like they were close friends. Shen Ji suddenly clicked his tongue and then mercilessly mocked her in front of everyone. Friends? Who's friends with her? 006 and I will always be enemies. 006, you have to be careful. Don't get blown up by my sneak attack. Haha. Translator, Henyi Translations Editor, Henyi Translations. Chapter 25-21. Page 1/1. Hearing Shen Ji's words, everyone was shocked. Not friends? Then why do you know each other so well? Who are you trying to fool? When the people present heard Shen Ji's words, their faces froze and they cried out in surprise. Yeah, if they're mortal enemies, why do you know each other so well? If they're mortal enemies, wouldn't you want nothing more than to cut each other into pieces? After the last mission, Zhu Ao had matured a lot. After hearing Shen Ji's words, he paused for a moment, then spoke up. You don't look like a bad girl. If she really wanted to do something bad, she wouldn't have told him directly that she was going to attack him. Lu Qing didn't understand Shen Ji. He pinched his temples as he spoke. Not friends? Why does she know each other so well? What a strange girl. At that moment, Yun Jian pursed her red lips in front of everyone. Just when everyone thought that Yun Jian would refute, or at least say that she and Shen Ji were friends and that they just liked to bicker with each other, Yun Jian suddenly said to Shen Ji in front of everyone, I'll be waiting. Just don't get killed by my counter cannon. Don't blame me for not collecting your corpse. After Yun Jian said this, everyone was completely shocked. How was this the way a normal friend would talk? What was the relationship between the two of them? Let's go. Just then, a large van drove up to the entrance of the military base. A staff member stuck his head out and called out to Lu Cheng and the others. Let's go. Lu Cheng saluted the members of the three teams, as well as the entrance of the military base. His eyes reddened as he turned around and walked into the bottom of the van, climbing onto the back. This van was originally used to transport goods. It was very big. Once the back door was closed, it was surrounded by airtight walls. Yun Jian and Shen Ji were the second to easily jump into the back door of the van. Gu Junjian followed closely behind. After the group of people got on the van, the door was closed by the man who was driving the van. He was dressed like a staff member. This man dressed as a staff member was actually a soldier who had been sent as reinforcements. It wasn't easy to cross the border of N country. Of course, there was already a riot in N country, so they couldn't care that much. So all the special forces sent as reinforcements sat in the back of the van, making up the numbers and sneaking into N country. There were already quite a number of people sitting in this large van, all of whom were dressed normally. As soon as Yun Jian entered the van, someone lit up the light for Yun Jian and the others. Both Yun Jian and Shen Ji had excellent night vision, so they could see the people inside the carriage clearly. With the light, the interior of the van stand out. There were more than a dozen special forces soldiers in the carriage. They were all dressed in ordinary clothes and had rifles in their hands. It looked like they were resting with their eyes closed. The special forces soldier who lit the lighter glanced at Yun Jian and Shen Ji, then said to the four newcomers, "Go ahead and pick up a weapon. Go to the side and pick a weapon that suits you. Our car hasn't reached the border of country N. When we reach the border, the real battle will begin at any time." With that, the special forces soldier looked at Yun Jian and Shen Ji. "Little girls, remember to follow behind us. Don't go against those people." Shen Ji wasn't happy with that. She immediately replied, "Remember to follow me. I'll make sure you don't die." Translator, Henyi Translations Editor, Henyi Translations. Chapter 25-22. Shen Ji was a rather casual person. She would never force herself to say anything she wanted to say. As a result, these extremely arrogant words, which sounded to the ears of outsiders, were blurted out just like that. Yun Jian only glanced at Shen Ji. She didn't reach for the guns on the side. Instead, she leaned on the side and closed her eyes to rest. "Little girl, you've got some guts." The special forces soldier laughed after hearing this. Actually, to everyone in the car, this trip to N country was a matter of life and death. Perhaps they would never be able to return to their beloved country. But at this moment, no one was afraid. The special forces soldier chuckled and looked at Shen Ji. He introduced himself with interest. "I'm Shen Ji. My name is Zhengning. My surname is Dan." Everyone was named Zhengning. Seeing that Yun Jian had already sat down on the ground, Shen Ji also sat down, ignoring Dan Zhengning. Dan Zhengning wasn't angry. He laughed happily. His 40-something-year-old face suddenly had a trace of amusement on it. He had been determined to die in this mission and had lost all hope for the future. These two girls, one was very arrogant, the other completely ignored him. Perhaps the arrival of these two girls would bring a trace of joy to the last journey of his life. The van drove for a day and a night before finally arriving at the border of N country. There were people guarding the border of N country. They were probably part of N country's civil war. The driver had obviously forged a pass. At the entrance of N nation's border, after showing the military personnel their passes, they drove the large vans into N nation's territory. But just as the van was allowed to drive into N country's border, everyone in the car was on high alert. If they were discovered by the people outside, they would be greeted with a bloody battle. "Get down." Just as everyone relaxed their vigilance, a clear voice that only the people in the van could hear suddenly rang out. The voice came from Yun Jian's mouth. The people in the van didn't have time to understand what Yun Jian meant. But they were all martial artists. Their bodies were one step ahead of their heads. When they heard Yun Jian's words, they silently lay down on the floor of the van. Tut 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 tut. Just then, a burst of machine gun fire came from outside. The thin walls on both sides of the van were shot through. If they had been standing just now, they would have all been killed. This burst of machine gun fire, no one had given any warning. It was almost as if the sound had come out of the blue. Even the special forces soldier in the driver's seat who was disguised as a worker felt his eyelids twitch. But he couldn't speak. If he revealed even the slightest flaw, the army would discover the dozen people in the van. Finished. There's no sound of people inside. It's definitely the goods. A soldier from N country walked up to his leader and reported. "Fire," the leader said. At this time, the Special Forces soldier in disguise drove the van and smoothly drove into N country's border. Until they stopped at a safe area. The Special Forces soldier in disguise opened the back door. Seeing that everyone was fine, he let out a sigh of relief. And at this time, the soldier who called himself Dan Jianghu looked at Yun Jian. With a face of shock, he asked on behalf of everyone, "Young lady, how did you know that group of people would shoot at our van?" If Yun Jian hadn't discovered it, everyone in the van would have died. And even if they didn't die from the bullets, they would have been discovered by the people outside and killed. Just when everyone was looking at Yun Jian, they saw Yun Jian's red arc slightly pursed. She indifferently opened her mouth and said something that shocked everyone present. "I heard the sound of them pulling the gun." Chapter 25-23. When Yun Jian finished speaking, everyone present was shocked again. The sound of the gun being pulled and the gun being prepared to fire was very subtle. Just now, the group of N country soldiers outside the van were talking loudly in N country's voice. Yun Jian was actually able to hear the person outside pulling the trigger to fire around inside the van to check if there was anyone inside in the shortest time possible despite the disturbance. Yun Jian's ears were so sensitive. "You can even hear that." Dan Jianghu's eyes widened as he looked at her with a face full of horror. Yun Jian nodded. "All right, let's go meet up with our own people and discuss the plan." At this time, the Special Forces soldier disguised as a staff member wiped his sweat and closed the back door of the van. He walked back to the driver's seat and continued to drive. After that, they didn't encounter such a frightening situation again. At this time, the group had already been sent to an extremely remote place. This was the hiding place of the Z country's people who came to N country's aid. At the same time, there were many Z country's ordinary refugees hiding here. They couldn't return to their home country because they came here to work and earn money. A few months ago, there was an internal riot in N country. N country's forces began to madly slaughter Z country's people. Some Z country's people were even beaten up by N country's people with sticks until their heads were bleeding. Even blood directly gushed out from their brains. Among the Z country's people hiding here, some had unfortunately lost their parents. There were also some who were chased by N country's people and were stabbed several times, but stubbornly found a place to hide. In the end, they were rescued by Z country's people who came to help. When Yun Jian walked in, she saw many wounded people. A few Z country's female military doctors were treating their wounds. Among these Z country's female military doctors, there was a female military doctor with very smooth skin and very beautiful looks. However, she was indeed wearing very simple rough clothes. She walked towards the Special Forces soldier who disguised as a staff member and brought them into N country. "Zhang Heng, you know that we don't have enough military doctors, so you brought us 2 new military doctors?" The beautiful female military doctor glanced at Yun Jian and Shinji, then nodded at Yun Jian and Shinji. Then she spoke to the person disguised as a staff member. The staff member disguised as a Special Forces soldier, the man named Zhang Heng, heard the female military doctor's words and reached out to scratch his short hair. Then Zhang Heng shook his head and said to the female military doctor, No, they're here to help us fight." What he meant was that Yun Jian and Shinji weren't here to be military doctors. The female military doctor was stunned when she heard this. After all, people who could go to war. It was unheard of for a girl to go to the battlefield. Can they really fight on the battlefield with their skinny arms and legs? Another female military doctor who had just finished checking on an injured patient came over and stood beside the pretty female doctor, looking at Yun Jian and Shinji doubtfully. Just now, this little girl saved a whole car of people. Dan Jianghu couldn't help but say. Hearing this, the female military doctors and the group of injured people all blinked in shock. "We don't have enough weapons. Now we need to go out and get some guns from the N people," Zhang Heng said. Zhang Heng was about to tell Yun Jian and Shinji to stay here for a while. But before Zhang Heng could finish, Shen Ji heard him and suddenly became excited. She turned to look at Yun Jian. Suddenly, in front of the female military doctors, the group of injured people, and all the special forces soldiers, she arrogantly gestured to Yun Jian. 006, what do you think? Do you want to go steal some tanks from the N people to practice? Let's have a competition. Whoever steals the most tanks in 10 minutes wins. The winner will treat us to a feast. Come. Wonderful book house. Chapter 25-24. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. As soon as Shinji finished speaking, everyone was shocked. Especially the female military doctor who had come over to question whether Yun Jian and Shinji could really go on the field with their skinny limbs. This female military doctor was called Wang Shuefei. She was a battlefield female military doctor. The other one was very pretty, and she was the first to greet Zhang Heng. Her name was Zhang Meili. Zhang Meili, as her name suggested, was indeed very pretty. When she heard Yun Jian and Shinji's conversation, Wang Shuefei froze. Dan Zhengyu, Zhang Heng, Zhang Meili, and the others who were standing nearby, as well as the injured lying on the ground, were completely stupefied by the conversation between Yun Jian and Shinji. It should be known that Zhang Heng and the others had sneaked out to steal firearms from the people of N country during the riots. It was very dangerous for them to return with firearms, and they could lose their lives at any time. But this woman who came with Yun Jian actually said to Yun Jian that they were going to steal tanks from the N nation people for fun? The two of them wanted to compete to see who could steal the most tanks. What were they doing? Were they daydreaming? Even Lu Cheng's face was pale with fright. After all, Yun Jian and Shinji had been brought here by Lu Cheng. Gu Junjian had retired, and Lu Cheng was Yun Jian and Shinji's superior. Before Yun Jian could reply, Lu Cheng frowned and scolded Yun Jian and Shinji. Don't mess around. With that, Lu Cheng turned to Zhang Heng. I'll take good care of them. Zhang Heng seemed to be the person with the highest rank in this temporary hideout, so everyone listened to him. He was the one who had brought everyone into N Nation not long ago, pretending to be a worker. When Zhang Heng heard Lu Cheng's words, he nodded lightly at Lu Cheng. He didn't care about what Shinji said to Yun Jian. He waved at the people holding rifles and led everyone out of the hideout. Shinji had always been a man of his word. He didn't take Lu Cheng's words to heart. Instead, he walked over to Yun Jian, grabbed Yun Jian's shoulders, and was about to lead her out. Then it's settled. The winner pays. Shinji didn't care about what the others thought. But just when everyone thought that Yun Jian would agree, Shinji said, Yun Jian. With a smack, Yun Jian slapped Shinji's hand off her shoulder and crossed her arms over her chest, looking at Shinji in disdain as she spoke in front of everyone. Are you trying to trick me? The winner pays. Shinji. If Yun Jian didn't win, Shinji would claim that she was the one who beat Yun Jian. And if Yun Jian won, she would have to pay. Shinji was really good at scheming. But she found out. Ha. Then I won't go. Shinji saw that her scheme had been discovered and turned to leave. Yun Jian didn't stop her. Where is your friend going? It's dangerous outside. Your friend is so pretty. If she meets N nation people, then. Zhang Meili was kind. She quickly walked over and asked Yun Jian. Shinji was the kind of person who showed her fierceness on her face. Yun Jian was the kind of person who hid a knife behind a smile. Zhang Meili didn't dare to ask Shinji directly because her expression looked fierce. She turned to Yun Jian. Yun Jian heard this and pursed her lips. Before Yun Jian could say anything, Shinji heard Zhang Meili's words. She turned around and spoke in front of everyone who thought that she and Yun Jian were good friends. Friends? 006 and I will always be enemies. 006, I promised you to come to the battlefield to compete with you. Just you wait. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. Chapter 25-25. Page 1/1. Lu Cheng and Gu Junjian already knew that Shenji and Yunjian didn't get along, but Wang Shuefei, Zhang Meili, Zhang Heng and the others thought that Shenji and Yunjian were friends. After all, only friends would say things like, whoever wins gets to treat, right? But when they heard Shenji's arrogant words, they were all stunned. Before they could recover, Yunjian stretched out her thumb and brushed it across her red lips. She smiled playfully. Then, in front of everyone, she suddenly spoke to Shenji, who was leaving the hiding place. She used words that were several times more arrogant than Shenji's. 095, I accept your challenge. But before that, don't die on this battlefield, or I won't collect your corpse. 095 was Shenji's number. The two of them had always called each other by their numbers in Anhun. Hearing Yunjian's words, everyone was stunned again. After all, Yunjian and Shenji's words and actions, as well as the way they talked, were very unusual. Not only did they call each other by numbers, but they also refused to admit that they were friends. How could friends be like this? And Shenji's murderous aura was fierce, as if she was determined to fight Yunjian to the end. It was as if she would never be satisfied until she defeated Yunjian. Ha, I love hearing that. Shenji suddenly smiled a hair-raising smile. In the next second, she disappeared from her hiding place. Lu Cheng and Zhang Meili didn't even have time to call her back before she was gone. When Zhang Meili finally reacted, her expression changed. She immediately shouted at Yunjian. Your friend went out. You didn't stop her. This morning, a woman was gang-raped on the streets. N country is in chaos right now. It's not as simple as you think. Hurry up and get your friend back. Zhang Meili didn't dare to go out herself. This hiding place was very well hidden, at least for now. N country's people wouldn't be able to find this place. But recently, Zhang Heng had also discovered that N country's forces were moving towards this place. In a few more days, their hiding place here would become unsafe. They had to find a new hiding place and move their hiding place in time. Otherwise, if they were discovered by the forces of N country, they would probably die without a burial place. Zhang Meili was pretty and there were so many N country people outside. She didn't dare to chase after Shenji, so she could only say this to Yunjian. Zhang Meili meant well. After all, normal people wouldn't say such things to Yunjian at a time like this. Since Meili had spoken, it was time for Yunjian would go find Shenziziziz. Contrary to everyone's expectations, Yunjian merely pressed her lips together. She had no intention of going out to look for the man. Instead, she went to the stairs and sat down in front of everyone, not minding the filth. She closed her eyes and said, I'm sorry. Just let her leave. She won't die anyway. The way he said it, when everyone heard this, they were even more stunned. You? How can you be so vicious? Even if she's not your friend, she should be someone who came with you. How can you do this? Wang Shuefei didn't like Yunjian and Shenji at first. The two girls were actually here to support the battle. Now that she heard Yunjian's words, she was even more pissed. Before Wang Shuefei could finish, however, Yunjian spoke before her. What she said struck fear into everyone's heart. Don't worry. With her strength, she won't die. She won't die on the battlefield. If she dies, she'll die by my hands. Translator, Henyu Translations Editor, Henyu Translations. You're tuning into the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.